I'm Jenny Gage, and this is Life Take Two. Hi, everybody. I woke up this morning so excited to talk to the amazing Carah Burrell, who some of my ex-Mormon friends are going to know as Nuance Ho. Good morning, Carah.
Hey, Jenny.
I'm so excited to have you on the show. You're so smart. You're so introspective about your experience and the big transition that you've had. And it is an absolute honor to have you. One of my favorite things to talk about is other people who have a life take two in that transition.
Yeah.
And you're one of them. So today I have a life take two on. I have a new introduction for my podcast written by my friend Robert Arnold. I haven't memorized it yet. So today you guys all get to have the honor of listening to my new intro to my show. Carah, tell me how you like it.
Okay.
Life Take Two is the story of what happens after the fall. When the lights go out, the plan collapses, and all that's left is the question of who you really are. I built myself again from the dust, not perfect, not polished, just honest. This space is for anyone learning to stand again, to ask why and how and what comes next. It's for the ones who are still learning that their truth was never something to be given. It was something to be remembered. This is the second take, the one that counts. Welcome to Life Take Two.
Love it. I'm so honored to be a fellow Life Take Tour. That's exactly what would be written on my heart, too. That's a beautiful intro.
Well, thank you. So everybody, welcome to Life Take Two today, where we're going to talk to a fellow ex-Mormon, Carah Burrell. And Carah, I'd like to start for those of my followers who've never heard you before. First of all, where can we find you?
Well, I like to get really meta and spiritual about everything. So whatever you want to find in me, you'll probably find in yourself, because we're all just mirrors and reflections of each other. This is, of course, me being silly and comedic, but also having a sincere heart. As I introduce myself to your audience, hello, everyone. My name is Carah Burrell. I go by Nuance Ho sometimes. And I started on TikTok around the same time Jenny did. I just did an interview with Jenny on my channel, and we've kind of known each other across the interwebs for a while. So TikTok is where I started. I still am semi-active there, and Instagram under Nuance Ho, and then on my Carah Burrell YouTube channel. That's where I try to put out post-Mormon content that I hope is useful and introspective, and talk about the types of experiences that I've had post leaving the church, some history, some interviews, a little bit of everything. So Carah Burrell on YouTube. And I have two podcasts called The Mormon History Hoedown, which is kind of just all encompassing of
It's so great. I love the hoedown.
Thanks. And then I talk about Tim Ballard with my co-host Ryan Fisher, who used to work with Tim Ballard, the former CEO, founder of Operation Underground Railroad. And so we talk about Tim Ballard on our podcast, Timmy Did What? And you can find those on wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Thank you so much. And we'll put all those links in the description. Highly recommend everyone go listen. First of all, I love everything that you're doing right now, and I rarely miss one of your episodes. You have just, like, you make me think. You bring out details that I haven't had the time to research and didn't know about. And there's a couple of reasons why I feel like we've always been kind of parallel out there in the online world. But there's two ways that we've really been kind of linked without intentionally being so. First of all, you and I were some of the original pioneers of ex-Mormon TikTok, and we're on this podcast today in part because I saw you.
Yeah.
So way back during the pandemic, I left the church in 2018. And then my marriage collapses, and then my health collapses, and then a pandemic starts. And during this era, this was Jenny's laying in bed, trying not to die of COVID and an anoxic brain injury era. And my kids put TikTok on my phone. And I was deconstructing the church and just going through all this hurt and shock and grief processing, losing my worldview, and then also just seeing all the deception and the lies that I had been fed my whole entire life. And so my son's like, here, Mom, why don't you just watch TikTok while you're laying in bed sick or at the hospital or whatever? And I saw Mitch Shira doing his little Thomas Monson spoofs. And then I saw one of your videos, this Nuance Ho, and you were doing funny stuff, like you were spoofing. If the Mormon missionaries told the truth, then they'd knock on your door and tell you about polygamy and stuff.
Yeah, those are fun.
They were so great. So you were one of the first people that I ever saw. So I decided one day to do my very first ever TikTok video, which was want to know why I'm unemployed and homeless as a 44-year-old woman because my Mormon stake president told me that I needed to quit my job so that I could obey the family proclamation. So here I am. That video went really viral, and 6.5 years later, here we are. So you are literally
Mhm.
the inspiration behind me deciding that I was going to speak up about the church. So definitely feel such a connection to you for that. So thank you for that. Thank you for
Mhm.
all the inspiration, and thank you for helping me and so many other people deconstruct leaving our religions of origin.
Oh, thank you for saying that. And um, we just had an interview on my channel, so we might repeat some
Please
of the
go
same
watch
things
it.
again. Yeah, go watch it. It's great. Where I interviewed Jenny on my channel, and I went and had a Mormon Stories interview soon after that time period in my life. And I remember telling John DeLynn in that interview that like I I was just getting started back then, and I had so many people like Bill Reel and other podcasters that I do not know what I would have done without. Like
Mhm.
when I would talk about Bill Reel when I was like 5 years ago, I would start crying because he was the only person who could make sense of the mess of what I was going through. And I'm just trying to emphasize how difficult it is to do a life take two, how difficult it is to pick up the pieces from what the F just happened to us and find people who resonate with you. And we all kind of different have our different content creators. And I felt like like a grandbaby or like, a child of like Bill Reel's legacy, then like carrying on that legacy and him helping me start, my podcasting and giving advice and stuff. And it's just such an integral part of the post-Mormon experience that we have this podcasting landscape, this media landscape of people actually being able to find community
Mhm.
after such a devastating car crash, to their system. So thanks for saying all that. And let's go make some more little grandbabies to go out and
Right.
spread the word.
It's always fun. I love when I see in my For You page over on TikTok when a new ex-Mormon pops up, like they've just gotten their wings, they've just come over to the dark side with all of
I
us
know.
apostates, and it's like their first or second video. Like it does, as those of us who are out there just like I didn't know what to talk about. I didn't know what to say. I was literally just using my TikTok as therapy and also as a
Yeah.
warning to other people, like, you guys, this is what my bishop did. This is what the stake president did. This is what the doctrine did in my life. This is the result. And in a lot of ways, it was just like working out my own stuff on screen, which I think a lot of us have done on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
But that community that we've built and then seeing the little new people kind of carry that torch and run with it is one of my absolute favorite things. I'm so grateful for all of us pioneers who were there kind of just doing our thing in the dark and creating this space for others. I want to put just a little pin in something that you said about that car crash that happens to your system when you have this big life transition. Because I don't know if you've heard this a lot, but when I left the church, I had so many people, so many of my friends that weren't Mormon, they were just like, woohoo, party time. Now Jenny gets to do a whiskey shot. And wow, I'm going to drive Jenny to Starbucks. This is great.
Mhm.
And 2 weeks after I left the church, then my 24-year marriage collapsed. So now I'm
Yeah.
going through a divorce, and then I lost my home and all this stuff at the same time. And I had so many friends who just wanted me to be happy about that. Like, Jenny, welcome to the bright side. And
Mm-mm.
it's not happy, which is why, like, I work with a lot of people who are leaving MAGA too now. And when you've had a worldview that's shaped your entire life, and that is your security, and that is your hope in this universe, and all of your community and everything is based on that. When you
Yep.
lose that faith, when you get that divorce, when you come over to the other side, there's so much that you've lost. Gaining coffee and being able to go through the Starbucks drive-through didn't fucking bring back the fact that now I don't think that I'm going to live in a celestial mansion with my grandma when I die.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
lost far more than I gained. Do you feel the same?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And to add to that, I just put out a video about 2 weeks ago that's called uh, Ex Mormon, but not ex moron affectionately story time. And I kind of talk about nervous system regulation and different stories of how I've had to replace the God that I once worshipped, because I think we talk so much in this space about what we can do, that we can drink now, and celebrating different aspects of that without also mourning the loss of, there was a nervous system regulation mechanism that I had that was ripped out of my operating system, like somebody ripping out the motherboard of a computer with like sparks flying and everything. Like, we don't sometimes recognize that with all of the new challenges of like, I'm going to be drinking, I'm going to be experimenting in X, Y, and Z way, but I also don't have a way to ground myself the same way that I did when I could say a prayer up to God and have this belief that he was the third of the Godhead was coming down to dwell within me. And that was a real nervous system regulation for 30 years of my life. So not only are we going through all these other things, we have to be realistic about how we're handling them insufficiently without replacing that nervous system regulation with tools that just take time. They take new neural pathways being formed. And that's one of the biggest things that I had to learn post-Mormonism is like, yeah, there's a car crash. Yeah, there's a lot of problems. Of things you have to reconcile, and relationships change, and your beliefs about politics and feminism, and a lot of beliefs will change, but how your system handles that is going to be like the real test of faith. And so when you mention like, yay, we can go to Starbucks or we can go drinking now, the celebratory part that I do want to reclaim is that the closest thing to God that I have found now is finding that divinity within myself, that the God that once kept me safe, the God that I once prayed to, that I believed could regulate my nervous system when I was feeling anxious or afraid or scared about money or making a decision, that I can have that God inside my chest. I can know and be closer to something that is not outsourced, that is within me. And that is the closest thing to God that I have found. And I can do that over and over and over again. So I hope that made sense in my answer, because it's a lot that's going on, but we have to reclaim and find the kind of source of divinity within whatever you believe about that.
Carah, not only did that make sense, but that was so profound that I go back and rewind this. And I would encourage anyone,
Go watch.
Thank you. Whatever your life take two moment is, go rewind what Carah just said, and we'll put that specific video in a link. It'll be the first link in the description. Super important.
I also wrote, people liked it so much that I wrote a Substack article. I just started on Substack, so go subscribe. I rewrote a portion of that for a Substack as well, just like, because I want people to read it. I'm in this new thing right now where if anyone knows Britt Hartley from Nuance and Spirituality, who's amazing.
I love Britt so much. I couldn't have gone through it without Britt. I have her book literally like tucked in by the side of my bed, because I'll read it. If I hadn't had everything that she taught, I could have never made it through to the other side. I'd be a wreck. I'd be an alcoholic. I'd still be in my Ho phase. That's no good.
The Nuance
That was my coping mechanism.
We'll have to talk Ho phase after the commercial break. But yeah, if you guys don't know Britt Hartley, look her up. What Britt is known for in No Nonsense Spirituality is taking what we know about what is advantageous to human flourishing with spirituality and rituals, and then how do we reclaim them and adapt them in the healthiest ways as a secular person. And that's one of the things that's really missing from the ex-Mormon post-religious life, is really focusing on the rebuilding and replacing those rituals. And she has a course with Jim Palmer, who's fantastic, that I'm taking right now to do what Britt does. And so she's
I didn't know you were doing the Jim Palmer course. That's awesome.
So I have a roadmap that I've laid out with Britt to become a spiritual director and also a trip sitter. So if you're in Salt Lake, hit me up in a couple months when I'm certified. But
amazing. So I'm friends with Jim too.
Really? Yay. So
yeah, he's so great.
You know how fantastic they are. And yeah, the big thing that I like to focus on is that kind of one for one, like when I was Mormon, I did this when I was feeling anxious. This was my ritual. This was the way that I not just saw the world, like that I am loved and I am taken care of, but how do I reclaim that, and how do I implement rituals that mean something to me right now? And in my video and in my Substack article, I tell the story how I was on a whale watching boat. The name of the article is "There's no atheists on whale watching boats. Similar, there's no atheists in foxholes. So like I was on a whale watching boat a couple weeks ago in LA, and I ended up hurling off of the edge of the boat for 2 hours straight. And when you're in these situations, it was actually like a very spiritual, intense time for me. And I was like, I believe in alchemizing pain. I believe in turning garbage things into something I can use and into gold. And when you're in situations that you just can't get out of, and I'm sure you know what I mean, like, how do you alchemize this? How do you turn what this pain that you can't get out of, like, what inner work is within me that I don't have a God to alchemize this pain, to take this away, to tell me everything's going to be fine and I'm cared
Beauty
for and
from
I'm
ashes,
loved.
and it has to come from inside. Yeah.
Yeah, like, where is it within me that I'm going to be able to hold myself through these 2 hours that I am in unbelievable pain, hurling off the edge of a boat that is not anywhere near shore? And it's the same space that I cultivated when I was giving birth. I gave birth 3 times naturally to my kids. And the same space that I once was like my second birth was so regulated because I was such a Jesus freak at the time, because I knew how to harness that power. And I'm like, surely I can still harness that same power. I'm like, I'm not having contractions. I'm just hurling off the edge of a boat. So the same mindfulness techniques, the same breathing techniques, the same affirmations of like, I can see my nose. I can know my nose. I can see that there's breath coming in and out and nothing's going to overtake me harder than more than one breath at a time. And like that same space that we cultivate in religion of ritual and calming exercises and praying, like all of the same types of placeholders that humans need, we just have to be more intentional about making sure that we find the ones that work for us. And it's great because you don't do it because you feel like you have to, or you're going to hell if you don't. You do it because these rituals are healthy and our evolution has adapted us to find ways to cope with exorbitant amounts of pain. And it's just so cool to harness that and to feel like I don't have to obey anyone else's rules to know that I can have all of that comfort and all of the structures that really advantageous to me as a person. Like, I loved being Mormon for a lot of my life. Like, a lot of the things that were very helpful for my thriving, reclaiming those and finding those again. So that's kind of the journey that I'm on. And it's like a secular spiritual journey that I'm just in love with life every day. And I, like, back to the car crash thing, like, I loved your intro because, you don't really know if you'll be able to find that kind of peace again, and helping people find that peace outside of, yeah. Like finding that peace outside of like, yay, we can drink now. And there's a really, really fulfilling, beautiful life when you take ownership of your nervous system.
It definitely takes some time to get there, though. I mean,
Yes.
I'm called Life Take Two because I left the church early October 2018, December 8th, 2018. I decided that I could not go on any longer. And so I attempted to take my life. I woke up from the coma 10 hours later, and here I am.
That's great.
And it was an orderly in the hospital who was like, when I was like, oh no, I'm still alive. And he's like, hey, Jenny, consider it like a life take two. Ron Howard yelled cut, and now you get to reshoot it however you want.
Right.
And in that moment, I was like, but I had what I wanted, and now it's gone. I wanted to believe in God. I wanted to have, I loved my role in the Mormon Church. I didn't always love the church. The church was terrible for me. And now that I no longer have it in my life, I look back and it's like that bad boyfriend, like, you don't know he's bad, right? But like, then 7 years later, it's like, oh man, he was so bad. I loved who I was in the church. I was an organist. I was always in Relief Society presidencies. I was the primary president. I had this beautiful family. Like, the Mormon Church in so many ways made me have a role in my community where I was tightly interwoven with other people, and I had respect and love and opportunities to serve. And losing that was so hard, and you can't see that you'll ever rebuild that. And I can't wait for you to become a certified spiritual director and go through GEM's program. I think it's so important, especially for Mormons and evangelicals and people who've come out of those really extreme groups. Some of my Jehovah's Witnesses were just so confused. You have to go through that grieving process. But for anyone who is questioning their faith, anyone who is at the end of that life take one, and you don't even know what that life take two looks like, I would say that you just have to like tie a knot on the end of your rope and hang on for a little bit, because it absolutely does get better, and it takes time. But once it starts to get better and you do rebuild that life that's exactly the life of your dreams, it's so incredible. The replacing the rituals, Carah, I think of it as like a cookie recipe, and like, I liked chocolate chips and I liked oatmeal and whatever. And I'm just going to reconfigure some of those ingredients and I'm going to make a different cookie. So,
Exactly.
Britt, one of the things we actually did a holiday workshop together a couple years ago where we talked about rebuilding your holiday rituals, because that for me, it's funny how that like going into the holidays is still right now today, like 3 weeks from now, Kevin and I will be completely alone on Thanksgiving. My family's disowned me. I have nobody, and the kids will be at the ex's houses.
Mm-hmm.
So the holidays are always where you start to see those rituals, right? You have those family traditions. And a lot of my traditions were based on either my Mormon family or Jesus. And Christmas was really meaningful for me. Like I really like internally celebrated Jesus Christ,
Mm-hmm.
the Son of God came into the world for me and all of the songs and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And then, after losing the husband and the family disowning me and losing my faith in Jesus, of course, I tried to end my life during the holiday season. It was just so dark. So, building those new rituals, I now celebrate midwinter, which is completely secular. It's, kind of like the celebration of solstice. It's an ancient German thing. And I still embrace those traditions. And I'm so excited going into the holiday season for the things that I do. I don't celebrate Thanksgiving. I celebrate another Indigenous Peoples Day, and I hike to a Native American site that's way on top of a mountain here on Chimamack here in Tucson. And I always I'll find one famous First Nations person that I can celebrate, and I type up their thing. And if I do go to Thanksgiving at somebody else's house, I always wear black head to toe to just mourn the fact that my ancestors were so horrible to the First Nations people. Like, to me, it's this big celebration of, I guess it's not a celebration. It's a day of like mourning and introspection and connecting to other humans. And if I go to Thanksgiving dinner, then everybody knows,
Mm-hmm.
let Jenny read the thing about her First Nations person.
Yeah.
And I eat tofu instead of turkey and whatever. And then Christmas, my midwinter celebration, I'm so excited going into Christmas, knowing that as I celebrate that solstice and feed the homeless and do the things that I do, and I do put up a tree because, midwinter, the Germanic tribes put up trees just to bring a little bit of nature into their homes, and there's dark, cold months, and I certainly don't need to do that in Arizona. But it also ties me into, I am German, and it ties me into my German ancestors for generation after generation have gone out into the forest, chopped down pine boughs, brought them into their homes long before it was ever a Jesus thing. And
Yeah.
I've turned it into this beautiful ritual for me, like morning prayers. I loved my morning prayers. I loved our family scripture study. I've replaced that. I've swapped out the chocolate chips for some, I don't know, butterscotch, but you can't just lose everything. Replacing those things with ingredients that serve you. And I absolutely love your whale ship story. You got to find those ways that you can regulate, because if you lose that like pray to Jesus thing, then it tends to be extremely unsettling.
And you just feel kind of lost and alone and like, suicidal and having all those dark thoughts, which even when I've at times that I thought that I was doing pretty well, some dark habits or dark patterns or what have you will slip back in. And I'll be like, I can't do life like without the structure of the church and without these beliefs that I do believe, like as an agnostic atheist, as a secular person, I've made videos about this, that research has shown that like we evolved to believe untrue things. It was more advantageous for our evolution. And
Makes us
knowing that,
happy.
yeah, like, okay, knowing that, how can I hijack my own nervous system to believe that I'm the closest thing there is to God, basically? Like, blaspheme as much as you want. Be like, all of those things are within me. What if I just believed that? If that's the same thing as nervous system regulation, is just believing in a fuller version of yourself that can say, all right, I don't need to go down these dark paths of all these thoughts that are coming in my head, that I can't handle this, that I shouldn't try things, that like I'm just a failure, like all of those ideas about shame, that we don't have any God to put it on anymore. And so it just within ourselves, and just instead saying like, what if I just believed in a bigger version of myself that can hold all of that, kind of like I am a God? Be like, great, okay, I hate to make it so cut and dry, but like it's taken me 5 years to be able to be that calm and like capable, but it took a long time. And just to also circle back to your story, I'm really so sorry that that's your experience, and you've had such devastating things that you've gone through. But look at you now. And I hope that's the message to anyone who's having those, dark, dreading thoughts of where should life go. I hope that something that we say in this interview will spark you back to life, because Jenny and I know how dark those thoughts get. As a matter of fact, when I first interviewed Britt Hartley on my channel, Britt's words have been so vital and important to me that the first time I interviewed her and she was describing like nihilism, first 5 minutes of my interview, just like this, we're hopping on, she's doing her introduction. I'm off camera and I go back on StreamYard and I cut to me. I'm just bawling. And I'm just like, Britt, have you ever interviewed somebody and like they just started crying in the first 5 minutes? And I was like, you have no idea how many times like I have like needed those types of words to know that I'm not alone in this depressive nihilism, meaningless crisis. And like voices like Britt's and yours and so many content creators that are just able to foster a community of people who don't feel so alone, if nothing else, and put words to our experiences. Like it's life-saving, truly is life-saving. So
it's life-saving. It helps you process. The first time I ever saw Britt was early on, right? We're just all doing this stuff. We're making this whole ex-Mormon thing out there on the internet. And I found her on Facebook one day. She was doing a FaceTime Live with Bill Reel and just talking about all the stuff that Britt talks about. And there was one viewer. It said there was one viewer. And it's like, well, that's me. And I watched the entire thing. And I was taking notes. I'm grandma, so I take notes on paper. So I had like a piece of paper and I was just like taking all the notes. And yeah, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. So my friend Daniela over at Knitting Lady, she talks about how that if you leave a cult, then either you process and get the therapy and the help that you need, or you're going to just go back to another cult.
For sure.
And I dove into Christianity. Like the next week, I was at a Christian church. And the Christian church wasn't anything like the Mormon Church, but I was turning it into the Mormon Church. Like I was doing multiple Bible studies a week. I was going to church all day on Sunday, going to like different services and stuff, just so that I could like rebuild the Mormon Church. So Britt helped me process that. All of you did. Like our ex-Mormon community, which then morphed into this post-religious community full of Scientologists and Jehovah's Witnesses and evangelicals and all of us who've come together and just shared what worked for us. It's been such a healing just web of people tied together. So the way that I put the whole, like, Jesus and miracles, I have this little funny thing. I just say like, people are so magic. And I say it out loud all the time now too. So if I do a cool thing or I've had a beautiful experience, instead of like thanking God, because that was a big thing. Like I want to take a moment and just say a silent prayer and thank Heavenly Father. I will just sit back and wonder at the magic of people. The fact that we have these wireless electrical systems that don't need to be plugged in, the fact that we're having this conversation, that we have emotions and all these globs of cells that just somehow band together to make a human form. Like we don't realize how truly magical we are. And it's just that magic, I don't have to have a God. I didn't have to have something out there in the universe that's bigger than us. There are so many times during the day that I will just sit back. I'll look at my 16-year-old son who's turning into a man. He's growing out of his puppy phase and turning into a big dog. And I'll just think to myself, I don't have to wonder about God and the universe and our origin and where we're going next. I just soak up that people are magic. Life is magic. The world is magic. And that's enough for me. I don't need to know how. I don't need to know where we're going. Right now, this is magic.
Yeah, that's definitely a big piece of my rebuilding too. I call it recognizing that we're all just a chip off of divinity's old block. It's the thing that I've been saying lately. And finding awe. I'm like a very ADHD person and I like to be entertained all the time. And that's caused a lot of problems in my life. Let me tell you that much. And searching for my next dopamine hit. But finding awe is how I put it now. When you're rebuilding, you got to start with what you value. And I'm like, I value entertainment. I value awe. I value looking around at what is just amazing right now. And if you sit and just look around at your kids and do psychedelics sometimes, you can be like, wow, my cat is a freaking mini tiger. Like there are so many things that we just take for granted that are awe-inspiring, that are wonderful, that if I was an alien being plopped down into Earth right now, I'd be like, jackpot. Like absolutely jackpot life. Like look at this bedspread. Love it. oh my gosh, the clouds, the trees, like there really is so much to be grateful for. And that just spurs on more positive attitudes to be able to get through the difficult things that come up. Because being a parent, as I'm sure you know, is very hard. I have 3 little kids. And there are times where I'm like, I did not know it would be this hard. I did not know. But if you tap into the awe of it, of like, I didn't know that I get to do so many cool things. I didn't know that it would be this good. And just trying to reframe like how great some things can be. That's kind of where I'm at. But people are not here to hear me tell everyone how much I just love being a trad wife. I have to reclaim the parts of motherhood that, you know, like when you're a strong trad wife and then you need like some distance from that and you're like, okay, I still like to do X, Y, and Z trad wife things and reclaim like the really beautiful parts of motherhood, which if I could, I would. I would just be a 99% of my time spending with my kids because that's what I feel like is what centers and grounds me and keeps me going anyway. But that's where we get into my story, I guess, if you want to go there.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you describing what I think is one of the greatest gifts of the faith crisis, and that is the perspective shift. And again, you don't feel it when you're first going through it. It's like everything sucks, but that ability to feel awe. I go and stand on this bridge at sunset and I just bawl my eyes out, and people walk past me and they're like, "What is wrong with this girl?" I never understood just the beauty and the wonder of life because it was narrated to me in this way that was, very tidy and very weird too, with Heavenly Father and Kolob and all of the celestial wives and all of that stuff. And just stepping away and losing my faith and having that perspective shift, it's almost like you kind of experience life again for the first time in a very new and fresh way. So thank you for describing that. So
yeah,
I would love for you to just share a little bit of your origin story. So here you are today. You are this sassy, you're one of the most dynamic personalities, I think, in the entire Exmo space. I would dare anyone to tell me of anyone that's out there that is just more energetic and dynamic and gregarious than you.
Thanks.
If we were to go back to 6-year-old Carah, what would that have been like? The star B class in primary? What would your life have looked like then?
Well, I was a naughty kid in a lot of ways. I was, how do I even begin? The youngest sibling in a large Mormon family who seeks after attention was always just the role I was born to play, baby. So I had
How many kids in your family?
I have 5 kids in my family. My oldest brother has autism, Asperger's, and is deaf. And my parents were just not able to always really cope and handle with that. So a lot of attention went to him. And I was the youngest. And I just craved attention. I craved playmates. I didn't have a lot of kids to play with growing up. And I just was constantly trying to say things to make people laugh. And what kind of was the foundation of a lot of my religiosity was being molested for the good portion of my childhood from the time I was like 2 to 7. And
I'm so sorry. Can you talk about who did that? Have you talked about that?
Yeah. So I have a video on my channel called Why I Left the Mormon Church, Carah's Untold Story. And it's about 2 hours long. And I actually went back and watched it last night knowing that I was going to be on this interview because there's just so much that I've blocked out and I've forgotten about my life. And I was like, oh, I don't even know what I would say today if I didn't go back and watch that interview. And I feel like I peaked during that interview. I interviewed myself. I'm monologuing into the camera. I explain more of this in longer detail, but so my oldest brother was the one to do that and didn't have a lot of supervision in our household. My dad usually worked in a different state and wasn't around a lot. My mom had a lot of kids to manage, right? And I didn't have a lot of kids to play with. And so just kind of in my desperation to like want to have a playmate, like I would allow terrible things to be done to me just because then he would go and play with me and do something else if I put up with doing X, Y, and Z to him or have something done to me. And obviously it messes a kid up.
I'm so sorry. And that is so confusing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely messes you up.
So what it kind of did in terms of how I viewed myself and God is my earliest memories were when I was in like 5th grade. So it stopped right before I was baptized. I never knew why it stopped. And when I was in 5th grade, I came downstairs one day and I was December 21st, 1999. And I saw my mom crying in the living room, and my sister was consoling her, and my brother was standing nearby. And it was one of those moments where I was like, whatever's happening is a big deal, and it's probably going to change the rest of my life. Like, did dad die? What happened? And my mom is crying, and she takes me into her bedroom, and she explains that my brother basically confessed. It was like his 21st birthday, and he confessed what he did to me all these years before. And he felt like he wanted to get it off his chest for whatever reason. And so she was asking me all these questions, and I was so uncomfortable. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know. She didn't quite comfort me in the ways that I would comfort my child, of like, this isn't your fault or anything. So I didn't know what I was responsible for. She was saying like that he was going to go confess to his bishop. I didn't know what any of that meant. I thought like the bishop's going to read out a list of all of the sins of the drama of like what's been going on in like the death ward. As a child, you just don't know how to conceptualize what happened, why it happened, and how to view yourself, especially as it relates to like sexual sin, right? And so I remember having to kind of make a choice then in 5th grade of how I felt about all of this. I'm obviously raised very Mormon at this time. In 5th grade, I was living in Provo, Utah, which is like 99%
the
Mormon.
epicenter of the Mormon universe, Provo, Utah.
Yeah, like 99% Mormon in all of my elementary to high school, right? And so I had a lot of good leaders, and I had a lot of good support, but having to deal with this just on my own, I didn't have anyone to talk to. My parents never brought it up to me ever again. And then so figuring out what is all of this about, because around the same time in 5th grade is when I learned how to masturbate. And like anyone who's ever started masturbating as a kid, you're like, well, this is my new full-time hobby, you know? And so when you know about sexuality and you know you shouldn't be doing something and you don't know how to feel about all this stuff, like, okay, God, that I believe in and I worship, who am I to you? What is the purpose? Like, why did you let this happen? How could you love me when you could let this happen? And so the way that I made sense of it all was that God, he loves me. The version of God that I believed in, like we just said, that like we gave up and it was a car crash, was a really good God. Like, it was one of the healthiest versions of God I could ever believe in. It was one that loved me unconditionally, that said, like, none of this was your fault. He said, I'm not going to force you to confess to the bishop, because none of this other stuff should have happened, or become really prudish and become very traumatized and repressed and all of those things. And like, whatever someone's journey is valid. And I just was like, I'm going to walk the very fine line that God loves me and he's preparing a priesthood holder for me. And so part of my kind of journey into being like an alt-right, anti-feminist trad wife eventually all started, which I wouldn't have realized, that like a man was a plan. Like, like the way I'm describing that, like that I will know that that all of that is true, that God loves me when my priesthood holder shows up. And he did. And when I was 19, my husband, Aaron, who, I mean, we're separated and like planning on getting divorced, but I don't know what we're going to do. Point is, we're not together anymore.
Why do we have to define who people are in our life? Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to say. I'm like, he's not my ex-husband because it's not official yet, but I'll just call him Aaron, who's lovely in a lot of ways. But like him showing up when I was 19 and being so sweet and just everything that I needed in a man, that kind of proved to me that plan. I had a choice when I was 19 to either get married to him or leave the church and move and go to ASU. And I had two kind of paths before me, whether to stay in the church or leave. And I chose staying in the church, getting married in the temple, getting married to Aaron, because I felt like it would be disrespectful to the God that I was worshiping my entire childhood to not take this priesthood holder up on his offer to marry me, even though I was 19 and I had the brain of a child in so many ways.
I don't know you have the brain of a child there. I thought that I was very mature when I met Jake when I was 19. We got married when I was 20. I felt like I was an adult. And now I look back now and I have kids that are, I have a son that's 28, almost 29. And it's like, I don't even, like, he's adult enough to handle any of the stuff that you and I handled.
I know. I'm dating now and I'm like so self-aware about what I can handle, what I can't handle. To think that I could know what I needed at 19 that's a joke. But
life's like, if you buy a pair of jeans when you're 18, okay, and then society says that's the only pair of jeans that you can wear the rest of your life, right? You have to keep your same little 00 skinny little waist, those mom jeans. So for me, it would have been like 1992, right? Like, what jeans were we wearing in 1992? They're probably back in style today, but for the rest of your life, it's just those jeans. You can never grow, you can never expand, you can never just change your mind about the style. When I was 19 years old, I said that I would spend eternity with this person.
Yeah.
And I wasn't allowed to change. I wasn't allowed to ever outgrow that relationship. So, Carah, you made me think about
Yep.
something that just happened to me this week. It was my stepdaughter. So I've raised 7 kids. I have 3 steps, 4 bios, and I had an adopted child who my sister-in-law took when I was going through my ovarian tumor, almost dying. And then I have a daughter-in-law and a grandbaby. So I have so many little humans that I'm responsible for. So my stepdaughter, it was her very last
Cute.
volleyball game. She's a senior. So she's going to graduate. So we went up for senior night. And I just sat there in this huge crowd. Gilbert, Arizona, there's so many families.
Mhm.
The stands were absolutely packed, and all 3 teams, the freshman, JV, and then the senior team, all played that night. So we're there for hours and hours. And so many high school kids. So first little freshman girls walking back and forth in their little baggy jeans and their itty bitty little tank tops with their braces on. And then all of the JV crowd kind of came and went. And then the seniors came in. And I literally almost started crying in the middle of this game because I could picture 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old me and the guilt and the shame that I carried with me because of the Mormon Church. Like, a guy would take me to a dance and touch my boob, and I hadn't asked for that to happen.
Mhm.
And I would go repent to my bishop and feel like I was burning in hell at age 14. I had an experience that was a coerced date rape situation, and the Mormon
Mhm.
Church and all the guilt and the shame and the things that I was being put through. My bishop made me
Yeah.
read the miracle of forgiveness. I was 14 years old. I was 14. This kid was 19.
That's
And
crazy.
he said, read it twice. He had my mom drive me to Deseret Book. And I read the part about sexual sin is the sin next to murder. And I can still remember just like sitting in my bedroom with like the radio playing, reading this, and just that sinking into every cell in my body that I have just committed the sin next to murder. I'm like a murderer. I can never be forgiven. And then just this hopelessness of then what am I doing any of this for? Why do I get up in the morning and go to school? Why am I trying so hard to like deal with, just school life and keeping up on my grades and all that stuff? If I'm just going to burn in hell forever anyway, what's the point?
That's harsh.
And just thinking of the things that the church made me deal with, the guilt and the shame of just wearing too short of a skirt or not saying my prayers. I felt guilty if I didn't memorize all of the stupid scripture mastery scriptures for the seminary scripture bowl. I felt guilty if I slept in on Sunday and was half an hour late for church. I felt guilty if I said a cuss word. If I went to a friend's slumber party and they played a rated R movie and I knew that I wasn't supposed to watch rated R movies. I once had a friend give me a cherry Coke. My family was really big on no caffeine, but I'm also older than you. I was born in 1974, and the prophets at the time were really big on caffeine being satanic and evil. I came home from my friend Jenny. All my friends were Jenny. I came home from my friend Jenny's house with a cherry Coke, and my mom starts crying. And I realized, oh, God, I've just sinned. So instead of
Mhm.
just navigating what all of these other teenagers at my stepdaughter's high school are navigating, of just,
Mhm.
the nuances of high school social life and your
Yeah.
changing body and grades and all of the things that you deal with as a teenager, I dealt constantly with there was a God in the universe who was watching me, who hated me. I was never worthy. I always felt like a sinner. And that permeated everything that I went through my whole entire life. And that was the worst in high school, my high school experience, because you're so much aware, right? And I was
Mhm.
pretty and I was a cheerleader, and boys don't keep their hands
Mhm.
where you think they ought to be all the time. So I felt like just this week thinking about it at the volleyball game, I wish that I could go back and see what would my life have been like without all that guilt and shame. If I just had parents who were like, hey, you're trying your best, you're a good kid, get out there and, come home alive instead of return with honor, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the
Yeah, that's a
church,
lot to navigate.
in many ways, like that was probably the worst time for me. Um, as far as like that cost benefit ratio, high school, the church certainly cost me far much more than it benefited me. But then I grew up and got married and married a monster. Your husband was very nice. I married a psychopath. So I know that our experiences diverge a little bit there. But as a wife and a mom in the Mormon church, that's when I saw the most benefits from the church. When you start to make those friends, when you start to have callings, when
Mm.
as an adult, you leave college and a lot of adults can find themselves kind of on their own. But for me and Jake, we had these big, beautiful, amazing wards and all of these friends. And I felt like young newlywed life for us was, even with a horrible partner, was probably my favorite time in my life. What was your married life like for you? Once you got married and you're living the Mormon dream, right? You have your eternal companion, you've gone through the temple. What was that like for you?
A lot of banging. Really,
But
really, literally counting down the moments till we could go to the temple and get into the car. Yeah, because the only way to have like sex be sanctioned by your family, and if you have a boyfriend or whatever, the only way for your Mormon family to be okay with it is to get married.
yeah,
And people getting married young just would not happen if people were allowed to have sex. And so it really came down to we loved each other. Like I felt that God put him in my life for a reason. Like I felt like it was really a meant to be situation. And before we got married, I was working at a summer camp. This is like 2008. I was 19. I went away to this camp and I was planning on staying Mormon at the camp, as you do. And then I'm surrounded by all these people. I go from Provo, Utah to a camp that's mostly staffed by international students. And imagine my horror and delight by what a closed-minded small town girl I felt like all of a sudden with all these. I'm sitting in a circle with all these other camp counselors, and they're all telling like their sexiest sex stories of 19-year-olds who have like slept with 30 men up to that point. My one friend from Holland just banged a guy
were your camp
behind a
counselors
bike
supposed
station.
to be talking about that stuff? Like
not in front of the kids. This is before the kids got there. Just like a bunch of college students, just like drinking before the kids got there, and when the kids did get there, just like European drinking and sexual behavior that my American conservative heart was like, well, I just kissed a boy last night before I left. That was my husband, Aaron. And then they're like, and then what happened? I was like, I told the story to all my Provo, Utah friends, and they were all screaming in the clubhouse last night. And now I'm here, and you guys are like asking what else happened next. I'm like, in my world, this is a very interesting story. I had my first kiss yesterday. Very like sexually charged, but also naive. So there's a big old world out there, and I wanted to go take a bite of it in some ways. So I got up to some sinning at this camp and had a lot of my first experiences out that you would have in your college, because I didn't go to college. This was my normal like adolescent time where I smoked my first cigarette, drank my first alcohols, kissed my first girls, and stuff like that. And got into like I was a big rebel, and it's more fun because did I mention the attention thing earlier? Imagine when you have 100 girls at camp and everyone's like, Carah the Mormon is drinking, and I'm like, it was a fun time. And so I get home and I'm like, that partying was as fun as they said it was. But I had just gotten with Aaron that right before I left to this camp. And so it was like, he wanted a worthy girl to take to the temple. And I wanted all of those things, like I said, and I had a choice to make. And so it's funny at the time, like part of my testimony that he was the one for me was how scared I was of him at first, and then how much we fell in love really quickly. I got home August 19th from camp, and we were engaged by September 7th. And like, it was quick. It was very quick. We got married December 18th of 2008. And it was a testimony to me that like God will. And so it was an excruciating 3 months of an engagement because I was good. I was like, I will not do anything. I will not lie. I will not lie. And some people do.
So then
naughty.
You have all these little rules, right? So I was engaged for 3 years before I met Jake and was forced to marry him. And me and my fiance, when we were at college, it's like, we're never going to kiss unless both of our feet are on the floor. And you never lay down together. And you always have like the Book of Mormon in between you, because I didn't want to be kissing. And even through my shirt, have like my breast brush up against his baseball player muscular chest, because that's going to arouse me too much. And
you're playing with fire when you do that.
If he was inside my dorm, then I always had the window open and I'd keep the door open too. Oh, we're not going to tempt Satan by closing the door, because if we close the door, then all the naughty stuff's going to happen. So, so we stayed good by like all these rules. But then eventually we soaked anyway the day before he went on his mission. But
what?
I got soaked.
A real
I've
soaker?
done videos on this. Yeah, like
I
he
did not
soaked
know
me. And then he was like, that wasn't really because, like, I don't know. He convinced me. I don't even know. The clothes came off and he's, let's just hug each other. And then whoop. And I'm like, so I always tell people, you don't soak, you get soaked. But then but it didn't really happen because we didn't move around. So I don't want to dive too deep into that. But all the rules. So that we kind of broke all the rules.
All of that just to soak. Wow.
All of that just soak. Yeah. And then he felt guilty. So he went to the MTC and he's like, well, maybe that did count as, sex. So then he repented to the MTC and then they sent him home. So he was supposed to go to Brazil on his mission. And then he told the MTC, oh, the night before I came to the MTC, I soaked my girlfriend. And so they sent him home for 2 months to repent. So then he gets called back out on his mission again, but they don't send him to Brasilia, Brazil. Like, he was going on such a cool mission. They're like, well, now you have to go stateside, buddy. So they sent him to Kettering, Ohio. So he didn't get to speak Portuguese, and it sucked. I mean, I love Ohio, but when you think that you're going
I'm
to Brazil,
from Ohio. Yeah.
Instead of Brazil, he went to Ohio because of that. Because I didn't keep my feet on the floor that night, and I let the jeans become unbuttoned, and it went to hell in a handbasket. And I carried so much guilt about that. In fact, my bishop utilized that guilt to manipulate me when he introduced me to Jake, because Jake assaulted me on our first date. And the bishop was like, well, because of this, your missionary's never going to want to marry you anyway. And I was like, yeah, I am definitely a hoe. So I didn't marry Ryan, the love of my life. I married Jake instead because I just had so much guilt. Like, I thought, I'm such a hoe. I'm such a hoe. So, but yeah, all the rules. And
on a serious note, being told by external figures, men in authority, boyfriends and anything, of like what constitutes a hoe, what constitutes sex, what constitutes consent, like all of those things have I just heard like outsourced as you were talking.
Yeah.
Like, people who are getting married, obviously for millennia, people have been getting married without the consent and without individuating and just becoming co-opted by patriarchy, obviously. But like,
fuck the patriarchy.
I just want to like call that out, that like, that now that like I'm dating as like a 36-year-old woman, I'm like, I just did not know that those things were within, that I could reclaim those, that like none of that is okay. Like, I didn't know about consent. I didn't know about a lot of those things, and like our culture is completely fine with us being uneducated about them because it serves somebody else's interest instead of ours. Like, gross. And anyway, sorry that happened.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense in this culture though, unfortunately.
So marriage is great. You guys have babies. You go to church on Sundays, and everything's good. Did you have any kinks in your belief system as, newlywed Carah, being in the hot eternal companion, having the babies? What was your calling at church? What did you do at church as a newlywed?
Oh, I was very anxiety ridden. They asked me to be the friendship coordinator in one of our first course.
Yeah, perfect for you. I don't know what that is, but that sounds like something that you would be perfect for.
I don't know. I'm much more extroverted and into that now, but then I was like, I was just scared of having a calling for the most
friendship coordinator. That sounds so culty.
Like,
you were called to love bomb people.
I was called to love bomb people, and I'm like, this is awkward. I don't know. So I most of my time in the church, I was in the nursery, which I loved. I was a nanny. What?
I always wanted to be in the Relief Society presidency. I always wanted to be in charge.
Oh, I see that in you. I just love babies. Like, I am like, in terms of reclaiming values as a post-Mormon, I love babies. It takes everything in me to not go up to strangers and be like, can I hold your baby? I love toddlers. I love babies. I was a nanny. That's how I like provided for us. So I was like a trad wife before I was a trad wife. So from the time I was 18 up until after I had 2 of my kids, I was still nannying full time pretty much. And that's how I provided. Well, my husband was going to school and everything. So yeah, I was in the nursery, and that also made it difficult though to make friends. Like, most of my relationships with people. Yeah. I'm like, I either babysit for people in the ward or I just know them when they pick up their kids. And so I didn't have a lot of time to make friendships. It's kind of one of the things that I regret, that I wasn't able to be in Relief Society very much. and talk to other adults. Like I stayed infantilized in a lot of ways because I was still kind of mentally like an 18-year-old who's just taking care of kids. So yeah, that's what my
That's what I
Mormon
felt about
life
my
is
whole entire
like.
married life, though. Like, people still, like, I'm really immature, right? I didn't emotionally develop, but it's because I went from being a child to being a very young mom. And then
Yeah.
in the Mormon Church, my callings didn't put me where I was working with other adults who really lived out there in the world and had skills and a different perspective than me.
Mhm.
I was in the nursery, I was in young women's, I was constantly around younger people because Mormon women are with other Mormon women or with
Mhm.
children. So I could be the Cub Scout mom, I could be a den mom, I could be in the nursery, I could be in primary, but it's not like I had a calling as stake president where I was out there
Yeah.
doing stuff. So I left the church at age 44, and I really hadn't developed past like age 17, 18, 19.
Yeah.
In fact, I
I
have a
feel the
really
same
good
way.
therapist. I've worked with my therapist now for almost, I don't know, for years. I've been in therapy for 8 years. And a lot of what, like, I always tell my therapist that she's raising me. Like, your
Mhm.
job is to help me mature and develop because nobody wanted me to mature. I was,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't
Yeah.
grow up.
That's a huge one. Yeah, that I definitely had stalled kind of adolescence as well. And well, Aaron and I met in a comedy club. We both did comedy when I was 19. And so he was a headliner already. I was just starting. And that's what kind of makes my Mormon story a little bit more unique because while I was very Mormon and very conservative, like in my teen years growing up, and followed all the rules, like the one loophole that I had was kind of listening to raunchier comedy, being in a comedy club, which is not Mormon at all. Very raunchy.
Scandalous.
Yeah.
Absolutely scandalous.
Yeah. So um we moved out to LA for 3 years, and my husband and I worked with this comedian, Tig Notaro, who's amazing. And we live like the Hollywood life of living in LA. It was like the funnest times of my life. I was nannying and we were obeying all of the rules, but we still were kind of in the comedy scene. And so we felt like we got to be cool Mormons. Like anybody who is like a creative Mormon would understand what I
Mhm.
mean, because this is how like a lot of people in our stake were, that like if creative Mormons, if cool Mormons in LA who are like screenwriters can make it work, sometimes those people were like pillars of my own testimony when I looked back at it, that I was raised in my home ward in Provo by I just kind of like I got like this weird offshoot of a life that is just not typical in Mormonism, that all of
Yeah.
the young women's leaders who raised me were all really outspoken feminists, and BYU professors, like my friends' moms, were the most influential people to me, who just told me I could be anything that I wanted to be, and they encouraged my comedy career. So that's what I first went into. But it just kind of got sidelined because then I got married to a man and I just put all of my plans in his basket and just supported
A
his
man
career
is
instead of
not a
my own.
plan.
Thank you. Yes. I was doing comedy and interested in those kinds of things. And like the people that I had around me, sometimes your testimony truly can be based in small parts by, and large parts by, pillars of people that you look around. You're like, if they're part of the church and I'm having doubts, I'm sure they've had doubts and they've worked through it.
Yeah.
Like if you're
Oh,
like, if I
absolutely.
being raised by liberal feminist BYU professors, like if they're still faithful, surely anything that could come up in the world, they've figured it out. So I shouldn't worry about it. There's like a screenwriter who's like the showrunner of Lord of the Rings and wrote all the Star Wars movies. I worked on a council with this guy. And sometimes I would just like, I think he was so amazing, so intelligent, went to Yale. And I'm like, if he's part of the church, I could never doubt because it must be true.
Yeah.
Not realizing that people live in a cognitive dissonance hellscape sometimes. So
Yep.
yeah, yeah, we lived in LA for many years, and then we had our 3 kids eventually. There was a third one. But then once we moved back to Utah and I had my first baby, and I was finally able to like stop nannying and just be in that trad wife life that I'd always wanted. Like the whole time I was nannying for all those years, what did I really want? Like I just wanted my husband to graduate from school so that he could take care of us and I could just stay home and pop out babies. Like that's what I was told like true
Mhm.
happiness was. That's my personality. That's what I like to do. Partially because I do like babies, but also partially because I didn't know my capabilities, and I I wasn't told of my capabilities. That wasn't like a major part of my upbringing. Was
Nobody cares
Carah,
about your capabilities.
yeah, Carah, you're smart, you're intelligent, you have something to offer the world outside of just having kids. Like that message did not get to me. That wasn't an important part of my propagandized Mormon understanding when
That's
you're
not the
hearing
message
young
of the
women.
church, though.
Yeah. So that's that idea that I could go and be anything I wanted and go to school and all of that, not part of my understanding at all of who I was as a person. And so when we talk about deconstructing from religion and taking the good pieces and the bad and stuff, it's kind of mourning, that loss of, like you're saying, it as a teenager at a football game, like who I would have been if I was really told to believe in myself and like, Carah, your brain is a muscle. Like things are hard, but you just got to keep working out. I was just very infantilized, you could say, that like to kind of stay small, stay a child. And that
I mean,
my
that's a
priesthood holder would
scripture.
come and get me. Yeah.
To be like a child.
Yeah.
And
To be
see through
submissive, being,
eyes. Yeah. Bow your head
yeah.
and say yes. I'm telling you, it's what it was all about, right?
Yeah.
So then you step into trad wife Carah era, and
she was a vixen, man. She was something else. So
tell us about that.
Okay. So this is again where I got like my experiences are just kind of atypical in a lot of ways.
Well,
so,
they are. And every time I've listened to you, like from the very beginning, can I just say that I've been really jealous of your Mormon life because you tell these stories about my young women's presidents and they were so supportive of me. And like, I had such an amazing time in the church. And also I'm just jealous of younger children in general because I was the oldest. So you love babies because you were the baby. I hate babies because I was the mom. I was parentified and made to change all the diapers and do all the stuff. I was my mommy's little assistant. And then sometimes I was my mom's replacement.
For sure.
But I grew up in a different era where the church was a lot more mean. And my young women's leaders would call me a slut. Like the word slut would come out of their mouth.
Yeah.
Because I wore a skirt that was too short because I was so poor. Like I grew up super poor. My family didn't have the money to buy me a longer skirt. So I'd sit down in young women's and my young women's leader, sister standing, would pull me aside and say, Jenny, why are you dressed like a slut today?
So harsh.
Yeah. So I definitely had a different experience and I've always been jealous. Every time I watch your TikToks, anytime you talk about your past growing up Mormon, they talk about the bishop's roulette. I think there's ward roulette, there's community roulette. And you definitely like won the jackpot with the people that you were surrounded by.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to clarify too, like I also grew up extremely poor. My dad joined the church when he was in his 20s and he was like doing dope and shooting up heroin and can't give blood anymore. And one of my dad's favorite quotes that he told us growing up was, kids, never try heroin because it is so good. So my dad was kind of a delinquent and for some reason bagged like my hottie of a mom, which is another like, I love my dad, but I have another Substack article where I just trash my dad.
He married up.
He married up. And I was like, only in freaking Mormon patriarchy can you get a woman as good as my mom is. Like, oh boy, you
feel like
that's
worse now than ever because there's so many quality women in Mormonism. And I don't usually make blanket statements like this, but when I was dating, it's like there are not worse men anywhere than inside the Mormon church. So after my divorce, I just made it a rule. I'm never dating another Mormon. And all of a sudden the quality of the men that I was dating went so up, like it just skyrocketed through the stratosphere because the men that are left in the Mormon church, like the hot ones, the smart ones, so many of the competent ones, they leave the church, they question and they skedaddle. They're not there anymore, right? Like they, I don't know, they do something, they can't go on their mission because they made out with their girlfriend, whatever the thing is. I don't know. As a blanket statement, I would say I stand by that and I always have, that the options of partners inside the Mormon church statistically are very small. And so you don't have a lot, slim pickings. Definitely is. If there's 4 million active members of the church right now, because they say 17 million or something members, 4 to 5 million active, how many of those are dateable men, potential partners, right? Not that many.
And I'll put it this way, like I had to explain to my kid's dad a couple of weeks ago about like what I'm working on as becoming my own woman I have to make money now. I have to raise the kids. I have to, have self-care. There's just so many things to my whole person that I have to do now and reclaiming so much and undoing the patriarchy in my own mind and so forth. And he's like, but like, it can't be that bad. Like, but I wasn't that bad of a husband. Like, I let you work when you wanted to start on Mormon stories and stuff like that. But I'm like, up until that point, though, nothing in my upbringing really, if programming is one way, nothing really deprogrammed me from that. Like, even though like a man could be a really good, unless you kind of go against that mainstream current and you are actively participating in helping your wife and yourself, like, deprogram from the patriarchy's tentacles that just envelop so many aspects of a person's conditioning and brain. Unless you're moving actively for it, then you're just moving with the current. And so I'm like, it's not that, you did anything particularly terrible in and being a patriarchal asshole to me or anything. It's just that the culture and the church already
was going with the flow.
Was already going with the flow. And like, I have to separate and I have to individuate and move away from those things. And so, yeah, it's difficult to find men, whether never Mormon, ex-Mormon, or whatever, who are consciously engaged in a good cause, as Mormons would say, like, that they're consciously aware, not in a performative way. So like, one of the guys that I've been dating lately that just left the church in the last year or two, I don't get too close too fast because I don't know what could come up. I'm like, you need like 5 years to really know before I know what like some red flags are, because you can't just pop out of this extremely patriarchal religion and assume that like all of these wires have been undone and replugged into the right ones. It takes a lot of life experiences and growth. So that's just my rant on
I stopped dating the ex-Mormons too,
engaged.
just across the board. I have no ex-Mormons, zero.
Those are the fanboys of mine that buy me nice gifts, though. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, you already... Yeah.
They can get there.
The person I was seeing for a while was a fan of mine that I met out in the wild. And I was like...
You know that Kevin's one of my YouTube followers, right? Like, Kevin followed me on YouTube way back before I started ex-Mormon TikTok or anything. I had a little divorce care podcast. So after I tried to end my life, and then, okay, well, now I'm doing this, I'm getting divorced. So I get out of the hospital and I start life take 2 on YouTube as a divorce care podcast. And I did little like Facebook live streams. My best friend and I, who had also left the church, we had this whole divorce care thing. We're like, how to date safely. And Kevin was one of my followers. So then we met out in the wild too. We met at the Costco gas station, and I hit on him at the Costco gas station because Kevin is the finest human being that I've ever seen up close and personal. And so, of course, I go say hello, and he's like, oh my God, Jenny Gage, I follow you. I'm your YouTube follower. He knew my dog's name. He had like seen every inch of my house. Yeah. He comes over for the first date and he's like, hi, Theo. Hi, Brody. Hi, Chloe. And it's like, it's stalkerish. It's weird, but I like it. It worked for me. So, I think that some of those ex-Mormon guys, if they really do the work and they fight that patriarchy and the male-female dynamics that have been ingrained into them full throttle, if they really deconstruct that, I think that ex-Mormon men can be some of the best partners and some of the best people, because certainly some of my real life friends are ex-Mormon men. But they're the ones who've paid for the therapy, read the books, it's all crashed down, and they have really recovered. Because otherwise, I think that the ex-Mormon men can be more patriarchal and more douchebaggy than the guys in the church. Because now we don't believe in Jesus, but we're still patriarchal douchebags who think that women need to be kept in their place. So, I don't know. It's a mixed bag.
Yeah, it can be a mixed bag, but it just is an encouragement to anyone at any stage, like, put in the work to say who benefits from like me living the way that I have been living that is advantageous to somebody else's means, and what is actually my value system. How do I show up for myself, my community, my family, and live from a place of that? And so I still have this programming in my brain where it's like, I don't want to come across as like some dumb pink-haired liberal on the internet, so I have to speak in a different nuanced language. But whatever the language is, it's just like, people do the work. Stop pointing fingers at other people. Need to do the work. I'm like, just do the work to undo the programming that somebody else put in your brain, whether from our society or from religion, and make yourself and your community a better person. Like, no more excuses, no matter who you are. That's how I would put it.
Amen to that. And I think for us, like, that applies to our religious indoctrination, that applies to political indoctrination, sociological, relational indoctrination. Every everything in my life was impacted and hardwired in there by the Mormon Church. So I had to kind of pull out all the wires and start all over again. It's been interesting. So happily married, living this really very unique life. And then one day you hit a bump and now you are an ex-Mormon.
And so when in about like 2012, I was living in LA, just as Mormon as ever. And I was on a trip with my sisters in Yosemite, and I have 2 older sisters, Bethany and Allison. Allison left the church when she was like 15 to go smoke weed with her boyfriends, and it wasn't a big deal. But my sister Bethany and I, best friends our entire life. I just moved next door to her because we're still best friends, and talk on the phone 3 hours a day, like third wheel in my marriage, my whole life.
And, I'm so jealous.
Having a sister who's just like a built-in best friend my whole life. And so extremely religious, the most devout Mormon, didn't watch PG-13 movies on her own accord. Like she just was very sensitive spiritually to things like that, and went and served a mission, walked till she had blood in her shoes. Like we picked her up from her mission and we went straight from the airport to a chiropractor because her back was immobile. Like she killed herself for the Lord. Cannot find a more devout Mormon. Everything is going along just fine. I'm on this trip with my sisters and we're about to jump into this swimming hole, and I'm like, hey, Beth, why are you going to take off your garments and go swimming with them? I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm not Mormon anymore. And I'm like, what? And she basically proceeds to tell me very like nonchalantly that she'd been keeping the secret basically for me the last couple of years, that she'd been deconstructing without any of my knowledge. And so just also want to add a shout out to people that when you do tell them that you're leaving the church, anyone who's had a close loved one tell them that they're leaving the church, who's blindsided, like put yourself in their shoes again. Like it is devastating. It was a total shock to my system. And because she's good, the church wasn't hard for her. So I'm like, it's true. Why can't you just do it? Like you can do hard things. It's not that she wants to sin or anything. It's not like she's gay and she has to leave for any other reason. It came easy to her. Like, why in the world would she leave it? And it took like 3 months for me to even be able to bridge the subject later because it was so painful. And we ended up talking on the phone for 3 hours and I was bawling my eyes out. I had to like skip work the next day because I couldn't sleep. Like it was so devastating to my system. So what I decided to do was kind of go back to basics of like, what do I believe? Like how can I have a firm foundation, no pun intended with Mormon jargon, of what I believe in. And so I went on a journey in 2012 to get back to basics of what I really believed. And that is when I found these Christian pastors. One of them is named Kyle Idleman, who has a church out of Louisville, Kentucky. And I started to find different Christian books and sermons and worship music that to this day, I wish I could lobotomize myself again and go back and listen and fall in love with Jesus all over again. So like the most grace-based version of Jesus that just loved me, that I wanted to sacrifice my life for, that I believed like, again, in a very healthy version of Jesus that I kind of reincorporated into my belief now as a secular person, because it was the happiest times of my life of like, I was living this dichotomy because in Mormonism, I was living in Santa Monica and I know that there's homeless people sleeping outside my door and I don't feel right going to a temple and thinking that I've done something good in the world by sitting in a room for a couple hours doing a bunch of dumb symbolism that just didn't make any sense to me, when I'm like, the God that I worship wants me to be serving people. It wants me to be serving people in my ward. It wants me to be actually taking this money and putting it to good use instead of giving it to $1 billion corporation.
Walking the walk instead of just talking the talk. Like,
like I just believed in a version of God. I think we all have like a DIY God in our head of whatever our highest ideals sometimes of what God would want from humanity. Like that's the God that I worshiped and I loved it. So I spent 7 years in this Jesus freak phase and it was the most happy service-oriented times of my life. And
it was 5 for me.
5.
The week after I left the church, I went straight to a Christian church. And it was so healing. I remember the pastor, like a couple minutes in, he said this thing in the microphone. He's like, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, no matter where you've been, Jesus loves you. You're perfect just like you are. And as a Mormon who I was never perfect, I was never good enough, right? I was always just a piece of shit. it was so healing. And my Jesus phase, like I don't regret my big time Christian era, because I
Mm-mm.
think that it healed me a lot. Like just that vehicle of forgiveness and grace and acceptance for no matter who
Mm-hmm.
you are. I don't think that I could have decompressed from Mormonism and ever just come out into the real world with any semblance of self-esteem, self-love, self-awareness, and love and compassion for other people if I hadn't had those training wheels first of Christianity. And I've been
Mm-hmm.
2 years Jesus free. I'm now atheist. I deconstructed all of that, and I just simply don't like the Bible in my life, and I don't believe in any of the truth claims of the Christian church either. So 2 years ago, that came to a screeching halt, and here I am on the other side. But I'm really grateful for my Jesus freak phase because it shaped who I am today.
Yeah. And
So 7 years for you. 7 years.
we share that in common. Like it's the thing that Christians always get on Mormons about is like, you guys are works based and we're over here being grace based. And even as a Mormon, I was like, they really have a point. They really have a point
Yeah.
with that. Like that being a kid and an adolescent in Mormonism is just one thing. And then when you go through the temple and you're an adult in Mormonism, it's a totally different thing because you
Mhm.
just don't know what being a temple going Mormon is like. Like I believed that God knew my heart. I believed that
Mhm.
God like is just a little bit more flexible of a belief. But then when you have to wear garments and you have to go to the temple and you have all of these, like you have to pay tithing and all of these things now are measures of your righteousness, and you feel like you're only going to get blessings if you do X, Y, and Z things, you can become very scrupulous and anxiety ridden. And so it's that perpetual motion of that Mormonism kind of keeps you in that hamster wheel of having that anxiety and feeding it with more Mormon rituals and more service and stuff, and then transferring over to a grace-based Christian God who, like the parables of Jesus, is he's like, just follow me, like give up everything and follow me. I just want your daily actions to show me that you will sacrifice everything, that you will leave the 99 to go after the one. Those kinds of messages that though that just more resonated with my soul at the time. And that, yeah, it can be
So
such a
beautiful.
healing different message.
Soaked Christianity up. Like I would
Yeah.
stand in Christian church every Sunday just bawling my eyes out. And it was all of that service based. It wasn't the purity culture that we had in Mormonism. Like I have to keep my skirt long and I have to not let the boys touch my boobs and watch R-rated movies and all that stuff. Christianity, and especially the church that I was part of, was very much like we were helping teachers in their classrooms during COVID. Every year we do a drive for foster kids in the area
Right.
to provide underwear and socks and bras and things like that for children and high school aged kids. It was so service based. And it was just like every Sunday I'd go to church and my Bible studies and stuff. And I felt like I was being wrapped up in this warm blanket of Jesus, which Mormons need, right? Like, yeah,
Hmm.
it definitely resonated with me so much. Christianity really just it hit right.
Yeah. Such an interesting different, because Mormons will say all day long that they're Christians. And while I don't like to get into the debate, I'm like, if they want to say they're Christians, they're Christians. But maybe you know what I'm like, from an agnostic atheist perspective, as somebody who was a Mormon and then a Christian, I'm like, when you're not a white nationalist Christian, some Christians really do Christianity better than Mormons.
Yes.
And
Yes.
maybe there's some ways that Mormons do Christianity better than Christians, but the conception of rules being tied to blessings in Mormonism is so fundamental
Yeah.
that you keep these covenants and you wear these things and you don't participate in this and you have to go check in with a bishop and you have a boxes to stuff. Some people, that structure might be like, for my dad, for instance, maybe that structure is what saved him from
It was
going off and
helpful.
being a full-blown drug addict, like he never would have been able to live in the neighborhood that we had, get the jobs, the opportunities, if he wasn't plugged into Mormonism. And like, so be it. That's what the structure is. But for people like me who, and again, my sister, like something came to a head where we're just like, Mormonism isn't progressing me spiritually or morally
It's keeping
anymore.
me small. Do you feel like
Yeah.
I think for Mormon women too, you're kept in this box, but it's not like a nice big box. It's not like Amazon with a big screen TV in it or something. It's this tiny little box with just like one pair of socks. And I felt my whole life. Like, even as a member of the church, I felt this. I felt that I was just being shoved into this box. I can't do my hair different. I can't listen to different music. It controlled the underwear on my ass. It controlled who
Yeah.
I dated, who I loved. Every thought in my head was from the church. And that box is so tiny, it just gets suffocating.
Yeah, I would put it like the first time that I did mushrooms, a couple of years ago, was the first time I realized and I woke up to the reality that 'cause I was an ex-Mormon at the time, obviously, and I realized that I had like about 5 voices in my head, 4 or 5 voices in my head, that my thoughts were not my own. Like whatever I was thinking, whatever I was
Mm.
contemplating in my life, what decisions I would make, it was in the voice of Mormon God was still there. Like, what would Mormon God think about this? And then what would my parents think about this? And then what would my older sister, the one I just described as my best friend, would think about this? And recognizing on a psychedelic for the first time to be like, I have never gotten rid of those voices that are constantly second guessing my decisions. So when you talk about a box, it's just a lot of external forces keeping you down and keeping you small. And so that I've known since the first time I did mushrooms that that's going to be my lifelong challenge. It can't go away in a night to be able to tell Mormon God, get out of my brain. Like you don't have a place here anymore. And, my sister, as earnest and helpful as they can be, it's still not me as an individual because that's my big thing in life. It's like we need community, but we also have to be able to individuate from what our expectations culturally and familial are to know who we are and know how we show up, to know we can trust ourselves. I didn't have a lot of self-trust because I was trusting in the Lord, or I was trusting if I did the right and I followed the commandments, that I would be protected. So when you take all of these things, the voices are still there. You have a lot of the voices, but without the self-trust. And it's a lifelong process to kind of, center yourself and decenter those voices and make them more on the auxiliary. And it's very difficult my mom was like one of my best friends growing up, and my leaving the church was extremely difficult on her. Like, extremely difficult. And so, what are some of the things that keep you small within Mormonism? It's just you don't want to lose your family. You don't want to lose the connections that you have with people that are your community, all because you decide to pay attention to the cognitive dissonance and go down the rabbit hole and investigate things. So it's very difficult to rise to the occasion, I would say, like to get out of that box and be like, I am a chip off of divinity's old block. Like, how could I possibly be boxed in? That's not what I was meant to do in this life.
I love that. So nobody really ever asked, did they, what does Carah want? What does Carah think? You were told what Carah thought. Carah thought what the Book of Mormon said, and the Young Women's Theme, and whatever came out in General Conference, and whatever the Holy Ghost told the bishop calling you were supposed to be in or you were supposed to be doing. Like, do you feel like most of your life inside the church, anybody cared what Carah thought or what Carah felt about any individual situation? I mean, you had really good young women's leaders and stuff, so I think they're the exception to the rule. So maybe the answer to that was a little bit yes.
I think it's the old, I see things in patterns. I see things in themes of consciousness and themes. So it's the kind of the old adage that's just very common in society that you can give people a long leash and then they think that they're free. I think that's kind of what it was, because I had this loophole where we were doing comedy, and because that our bishop knew about it and we would perform at our ward Christmas parties. And so everyone is like, yeah, I like Brian Regan. I like this and that, So you feel like you get to be a little bit of a rebel and you have a little bit of a leash.
You feel like you're carving your own path, right?
Yeah.
Like you're blazing your own trail, but were you really?
Yeah. I'm sure some psychologist or somebody could explain this better than I can, but that's the only thing that I could describe is if you feel like you have a certain amount of autonomy, it's kind of like what's happening with the garments right now with LDS women are allowed to show their sleeves now, or their shoulders, and the garments are shorter.
Garments.
And so when you feel like you're getting a little bit of autonomy back without recognizing you still have to cover this and this and this and this and this, and you still have to buy them from the church store, and you still have to believe all of these things that go along with it, that your worth is still found in wearing them. So if you give them an inch, they do believe that they're freer than they are. And I think that shows up all across society. where people don't recognize the cages that they're actually in because you give them their breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Like you still provide for them, so they're not really questioning what kind of cage they're in. That's how I would put
It's
it.
hard, though. That's such a great way to put it. Carah, I don't think that anybody in the entire ex-Mormon space who we know you so well, I don't think anyone gives you credit for the intellect and the insightfulness that you have. Like that's what I've been blown away, just our conversation in my podcast and talking to you and
Thank you.
all of our interactions. Like, yeah, we see you. You're smart. You're great. Your podcast is amazing. Your interviews are good. But you're definitely underrated. You're one of the smartest,
Aw.
deepest thinkers that I've dialogued with in a really long time.
Thank you. I feel the
My
same way about you.
brain
Takes one to know one. Takes one to know
thinks
one.
my brain is cramping right now, but it's really hard to even want to leave those cages when your happiness is in that cage, when your security is in that cage, when your husband's in that cage, when your mom and dad and your friends and everybody's in that cage. It's hard to want to break out of the cage, and that's what we've done. Just scrolling through some of my comments on YouTube, and this is one of my favorite comments I think I've had in a really long time. They just said, "What a decent human being. Stay safe." And I don't know why, like that just, I'm sitting here smiling because as a Mormon, I was striving for excellence and perfection and eternal glory and all these things. And then I left that behind. And it's like, what's my goal in life? My goal in life, I wake up every day and I'm just a human, right? I'm never going to be perfect. I'm never going to have a planet of Kolob where I'm creating my own spirit babies for my own universe. Like, I don't believe in any of that. I'm just aiming for being a good, decent human being. I'm not going to be perfect. I'm not going to be
Mhm.
exciting. I'm not going to impress myself or anybody else. But anyway,
What a decently hairstyled individual. Did everyone like Jenny's new hair? Gorgeous.
So, Carah, on your interview with me, somebody said that I looked like Erica Kirk's doppelganger. And that just
Ouch.
made me flip a lid. I'm just a basic blonde white girl. And whenever there's some basic blonde white girl who's on the news, I always get the comparison. So when Ruby Frankie came around, everyone was like, "You look like Ruby Frankie." And I was wearing my hair in a ponytail a lot and I was skinnier. And so people would say, I'd do videos where I was spoofing Ruby Frankie and people would say, like, "You literally look exactly like Ruby Frankie." Serena Joy, I've gotten a lot of, "Wow, you look so much like Serena Joy." And yeah, recently it's been a lot of Erica Kirk, and I just couldn't take it anymore. So it's all gone. I butched
It's
it.
gorgeous.
So
It's
thank
gorgeous.
you. Thank you. And thank you to people on your video commenting that I had a Erica Kirk vibe. I'm so old. Like when I left the church, it was too late for me to like dye my hair purple and like get a nose ring. I experimented with a nose ring. I'm a grandma. I'm not going to significantly change my looks, but there's no more MAGA curls for me. I'm over it. I'm done.
I've just accepted that, like, I live in Utah, and if you can't beat them, join them. So, like, you're not going to take my spray tan and fake lashes
Oh God, no,
and blonde
I'm
hair
not using
away
the
from
spray
me.
tan.
Yeah,
Karen,
like, you
I'm not
think I'm
getting crazy.
crazy? I don't want to look like a freak, okay? So,
And it's so funny. When Kevin first moved in with me, like the very first time he woke up and the sheets were like, you know, Jenny had like died
oh,
there.
yeah, I've gone
It was
through a
like
lot
a
of
crime scene marker.
sheets.
He's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, what happened last night?" "Well, I did the spray tan before I went to bed, and that is why my legs look glorious in the morning." So
which
the
reminds
Mormon
me,
Girl secrets.
I need more donors to my nonprofit and my podcast because I haven't worked very much lately. And so I don't do any of the routines that I used to do. And I can't infiltrate the Mormons. I don't have my fake lashes anymore. I don't have my Botox anymore. I don't do anything except for dye my hair now. And I need more donors so that I can infiltrate it and find peace and happiness in
I've never
my
done Botox, and I get accused of it all the time because I'm
really
51. I just have chubby cheeks. So we didn't have Botox. Like that's a new thing. My generation, no, I guess that maybe my generation Botox is, but I don't know.
it's too expensive. Don't start. It's the
I just don't
real
need
gateway
to.
drug.
You
Yeah,
gotta
you
have
don't need
chubby
to.
cheeks. Chubby
Yeah.
cheeks, and you don't need Botox. Okay, so what I'm curious about is the transition from Mormon to your Jesus era, you're an agnostic atheist, you've mentioned. So how'd you get there?
So I, like I said, was in this 7-year Jesus freak phase. And there came a day where my husband told me that he just did not believe in like the truth claims of Mormonism anymore. And it wasn't because he read any of the things with the CES letter. He's like kind of a one issue, like a single issue leaver, single issue voter. And that was
me.
Really
I
like
left one day. I just left.
And his issue was that he could not believe that there was a God who just had a one size fits all and gay people were not part of the eternal plan, and that we had so many gay friends in the comedy scene. And he just one day was like, I knew that he was listening to things and deconstructing, and I was like, he'll get there and he'll understand that while he is technically right, like I knew gay people are born gay. However, there's some reason why the church is still true. I was just willing to sidestep that. He was not willing to do that. So Easter 2019, he told us that'd be the last time he'd ever go to church. And so I was really devastated. And I had, these visions of the priesthood holder that you grow old with, you live an eternal life with, baptizing your kids and stuff. And he wasn't going to be that anymore. And so I was really devastated.
You lost your eternal companion in that moment.
Yeah. And so while I was really devastated, I was also a little bit grateful because I was like, okay, maybe this will give me some time to see if I just want to go and be a real Christian. And so a couple months later, I just went on the internet one night and I was like, well, what are ex-Mormons' problems? Like, I didn't even know. I couldn't articulate. Like, it's so interesting that I was like getting Fair Mormon, which is like the apologist arm of the LDS Church. I would get their emails and I would listen to Mormon apologetics, but I truly was kind of stupid enough that I really didn't know a lot of the historical problems and the reasons that people leave the church. So I'd go on the internet one night.
I didn't know Joseph Smith was a polygamist until I left the church in 2018. I had no idea.
Yeah, like if you're not out searching for it, it's not going to come to you. So one night I went searching and found some of the reasons, like the Book of Abraham, and was up till the wee hours of the morning. And I started the night thinking, well, what are ex-Mormons' issues with the church? To like 3 a.m. being like, oh, I'm an ex-Mormon now. Like you couldn't put it all back together. It's not just one thing, it's 100 things. And any of the apologetic arguments were just making it worse. Like, I'm like, I can't worship this God that would make me suspend my disbelief that much, that Joseph Smith is still a prophet while doing all of the same things that every other false prophet, con man, cult leader would do. Like, I was so I knew that I was going to leave the church and have to tell my family, but I was like, okay, I was still very conservative at the time. I had 2 Christian, really good friends. I was working for a conservative nonprofit at the time and very much into like the online political right-leaning sphere. I had a lot of alt-right type of ideas. And so I'm like, okay, so I can just go be a Christian and I'll stay conservative and that won't be an issue. And that's how it went for just a couple more months, until those same wheels that turn in your head of critical thinking and Mormonism, I started to apply to the Bible and to Christianity. And that's where it got dicey. That's where, my protection mechanisms in my brain were fighting for their life, because I could give up Mormonism from what I explained, but I did not want to give up a literal belief in Jesus. He was my best friend. It was the reason I did everything.
Breakup. Yeah, that was a harder breakup for me than the Mormon Church. I felt like the Book of Mormon had kept me from knowing the real Jesus. So when I became a Christian, I fell in love with Jesus for the first time ever, right? And losing that faith in Jesus was definitely a harder breakup for me than even leaving the Mormon Church, because then it's nihilism. And so now I'm like in the hospital dying once again at my other surgery. I've used up 6 of my 9 lives now, and there's no Jesus out there. Like I think that it's really hard to go from Mormon to Christian and then lose your best friend, your brother, your comfort. Like he was my rock of ages.
Yeah. And that's why I say, like, I do the work that I do sometimes, or I was crying on that podcast with Britt, because when you know what it is like to go through that dark night of the soul, where it's just operating system pulled out, rug from underneath you, like you have kids and you're like, what am I doing here? Like, what is this for? You just so much existential dread and depression. And it was, the most painful time of my life. And what's crazy is the night that I deconstructed everything and I realized like I don't have a good reason. Sometimes it's not as much as like I hate God or I don't like the rules or I don't believe in him. It's just really matter of fact, like, you know what? I thought I had a good reason that the Bible was like the word of God. Now that I look at how it was constructed, I actually don't have a good reason. I can't in good conscience say that I have a good reason to believe this is a literal deity anymore. And now what am I going to do with that? And so the night that happened, the next morning at 10 a.m., I got a call from my mom, and my dad and my mom were truck drivers, and they were driving back east. And they just so happened to be passing through this part of southern Indiana that my brother was living in at the time, that is just across the river from Louisville, Kentucky, where the pastor that I'd listened to. So imagine me for 7 years in my headphones every day. I cannot describe the devotion I had to the podcasts and the books and the sermons by this pastor, Kyle Eidelman. And every day, like that is where I got my direction. And his words just filled me with like the happiest times of my life. So imagine the day after I realized that God is not real anymore, I have an opportunity now to go fly out. My dad, his aorta ripped open in his chest and was about to die basically out at this hospital by Louisville, Kentucky. And so not only is I'm confronting for the first time the next morning, hours later, that I'm going to lose someone close to me. How do I feel about that? You know, all of those immediately. And then the second one is, that's weird that like, if there was ever going to be a sign from a God to be like, Carah, come back. I'm going to save your dad's life and you'll go to Louisville, Kentucky, and you'll go have an opportunity to meet the pastor that you've listened to for the last 7 years. Don't just let one night of atheism ruin this, Carah. Like, come on. Like, I was like, I think I'm a critical thinker now. I don't know if I can believe in God because this was very miraculous. So then like, the following day, me and my family fly out there to go visit my dad in the hospital and totally thought he was going to die. And it's very low rate of people recovering from this. And I took one day off from the hospital to go visit Kyle Eidelman's church in Louisville, Kentucky. And it was amazing. It was completely everything I'd ever wanted it to be. I walk in and I tell them like at the desk that I'm a Mormon, former Mormon from Utah, who's been listening to Kyle online for 7 years. And they're like, come with us. And they take me to the green room.
No way. You got like the VIP backstage.
And it's like a big kind of mega church. I still don't know if I would call it. I still have affectionate feelings for this mega church. Nonetheless, I go backstage to his green room and I meet him and I'm just sobbing, crying.
No way.
And then the worship band takes me in and I hang out and I have a buffet with the worship band and I'm there for both of the sermons backstage and I'm just like telling everyone my life story. And like, it was the most whirlwind, exciting experience. But once I was a critical thinker, I was like, I'm a critical thinker. I was like, I told this pastor to his face when I met him, I'm like, thank you. I'm like, you have changed my life. It's been the happiest 7 years of my life. However, I am an atheist now. But I told him what happened to my dad and he prayed with me for my dad. So it was a very topsy-turvy experience, but it's kind of a test. It was kind of a test of faith, but test of non-faith. So I passed the non-faith test and I did not believe again, even though it was hours difference. Like the flip was switched.
When that light bulb goes on, you just,
So yeah. And then I had the task of doing all of the reconstruction that I didn't even know that I would be in for. Big advice to people if you're ever in that situation, don't make major life choices.
Don't.
So I immediately decided to get pregnant with my third child because I thought that was a good idea. Love my son. Might have changed the timing of that one because hard pregnancy, COVID came on, and I didn't have a lot of the grounding that I had with my other pregnancies to believe in God. And we didn't know that COVID was going to happen and all of that. So it was just became a very topsy-turvy, tumultuous time. But then within that time period, I also immediately started to distance myself from more alt-right and like right-leaning conservative ideas that I had been associated with up to that point. And it's so interesting how both of those just went hand in hand when I was Mormon and Christian. It's like I explained in my interview that I did with you, like I didn't recognize how racist I was. I didn't recognize how homophobic I was, how the beliefs that I had did disenfranchise other people. And I didn't see it that way because as long as what I believe, other Mormon leaders believe those things, other Christian believers, like, therefore it can't be bad. And I thought that as long as I was within that kosher umbrella, I could be as racist or what have you, without recognizing that that was a sin, So
I talk about it as secondhand racism. Like, I didn't invent this. I'm not racist. God's racist. God cursed them. He gave them brown skin. I'm just a secondhand racist.
Yeah.
It's not me.
Yeah. I had a lot of work to do, and I was really active on Twitter at the time and really into politics. I was listening to Ben Shapiro every day up to that point, and Gavin McInnes, who's like the leader of the Proud Boys. Like, if anyone needs to know how far right I was, I listened to Gavin McInnes every single day for years. There's your proof. And then I was very active on Twitter, and I ran like an anti-feminist Mormon kind of themed political Twitter page. And I eventually had to tell my followers, I'm deleting this because I left the church.
Can't even imagine anti-feminist Carah. What's funny is I've known you since you left the church. I can't imagine it, but I also can barely imagine myself anymore. Old Jenny doesn't even hardly exist in my brain. When I read my diaries and watch old videos and stuff, I'm still shocked. Oh, how did this woman exist? It's just funny to picture you.
This is a good example, okay? Viewers, pay attention. This is how my brain worked, okay? My recognizing of the necessity of feminism came way later, but it had to come through the empathy and the love that I had for my husband and his situation. So I partially deconstructed the church because I could see how my husband was struggling with having to live up to his gender role and the amount of callings and meetings that he had. And he is also creative, and he didn't want to have to go get a corporate job and provide for the family. He wouldn't have rather done that, but he felt like he was following this certain path that is prescribed for Mormon men. And I loved him, and I empathized, and I understood where he was coming from completely. And it was because of my empathy for my husband that I started to recognize the harm of patriarchy and gender roles to the point where, if I see that in him, there must be something within me.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So I literally, so when you say Carah, how could you be such an anti-feminist? I put the needs of my husband and my family light years before my own, that I was not thinking of myself as an individual. I was thinking of how this house as a mothership can function. And if the head person within that who's leading the home is not doing well, how can I help them? Well, it helps by listening to them. And what am I listening to? I'm listening to their problems with the freaking patriarchy that we're under. So it's a little topsy-turvy, but
it still got you to the same destination in the end.
Yeah.
So
to paying attention, I was if I'm listening to your problems, I'm sure I probably got some own internalized ones going on in here. But I was of the thing that has taken over our country with the culture war of dumb SJWs with their feminist pink hair ranting against Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro, who hate free speech. The era of 2016 to 2019, where I felt that was a really big deal on the internet. Some people, they were Republican and conservative based on who they hated, but not actually what they valued. And I was a little bit of both. I'm I like being a stay-at-home mom. I like feeling I know my gender role. He knows his gender role. And anyone who thinks that I'd be better off single or without kids doesn't know the beauty and the bliss of the life that I'm living, without recognizing that sweetheart, you're free to do whatever you want to do. I just want to give you a choice. Feminism is there to give you a choice, sweetheart. Don't think that we just want to prescribe one size fits all for everyone. That's what you want to do as a white Christian nationalist, Carah. I didn't recognize that was happening. It was more just a focus on who to hate, who sounded stupid. But
that's a natural outcropping of being in a system that's very black and white. There's good and bad. There's right and wrong. And so for me, if you're not going to be that stay-at-home mom, if you're not going to support your husband and be his helpmeet and be submissive and just raise the kids and focus on the home, well, the only option, black and white, the only option is the crazy purple-haired feminist cat lady. And it's taken me 7 years outside of the church to even understand the nuance of being a woman. I was just part of a CBC documentary that I can only share snippets of with my American viewers right now. It aired in Canada this past week. It was called Big Feminine Energy, and it explored all the different facets of being a woman. There were some like the bimbo talk girls, the bombshell bimbos, certainly like some of the more like extreme feminists. I was on there as the former Mormon trad wife, and it was so fascinating for me how much I learned from this hour-long CBC documentary that I was part
Mhm.
of. 7 years after leaving Mormonism, I'm always re-examining, like, what does it mean to be a woman? And it doesn't have to be black or white, but it makes sense when you're raised Mormon and you're in these alt-right communities. There's always a black and white because that's how they control you. They want
Yeah.
a very easily defined answer. So I
Yeah.
want
Yep.
one last little bit of your story that I'd like to hear. After you transition out of Christianity and step into a belief system that clearly is far more congruous and authentic for you, what was that moment that you decided to turn on your phone and do a little hashtag Exmo video for the first time?
Oh, yeah. Good question. My origin story. Similar to you, I was also laid up in bed and somebody told me to get on TikTok. So after I had my son, it was COVID. Everyone was already kind of inside and I was having a lot
We were all
of health
stuck.
challenges. Yeah. And they thought I had MS because my brain was just not functioning. Turns out I was just having like 45 hours of sleep a day. Sorry, 45 minutes of sleep a day was all I was having because my son was a difficult baby. So I was in bed all the time, just trying to heal and trying to sleep. And so I got on TikTok and I saw a couple other ex-Mormon creators. There's only like 2 or 3 at the time. And I
Who
immediately
did
was
you see?
like,
Did you see Mitch? Like he was one
I
of the
don't think
first ones.
maybe what I remember is Exmo Panda Girl Jessie, or something of those
Okay.
lines. Do you remember Jessie? And for some reason, it's not coming to me. It's Kate. I'm still like friends with her. It's not coming to me. Kate. And then, do you remember Maggie? You have to remember
Yes.
Maggie.
Yes.
Maggie in Babylon.
She was like old school. Is she still doing it?
No, like she disappeared around 2021. Like she was in and out, but yeah. And so it is a very interesting thing where you leave the church, you don't realize how much you kind of need to hear other people validate and explain their perspectives and
Yeah.
stuff. So it's very lovely and intoxicating. And I
Group
was like, oh my
therapy.
gosh, yeah. And commenting on it. And like those people were like celebrities to me, you know?
Mhm.
And so I one day remember thinking like, all right, Carah, you got a comedy background. Like you can do something. And so the first time I knew that I was like, if I make this video, I have to prepare for my life to change. I remember consciously being like, I am coming out with some guns a-blazing here. And it was around the time, do you remember the Give Thanks campaign during
Oh,
COVID
yes.
that
Yep. Mhm.
President Nelson had? And it was just so freaking tone deaf and so stupid. So he told Mormons, sorry, I'm touching my hair so much. It's my nervous habit.
Me too.
He
Good job.
he was telling the world of the church
We're
to
going to flood the internet. We're going to flood Facebook with give thanks. And was it every day you're going to
like for a
post something that
week.
you're grateful for that
Yeah.
Heavenly Father has blessed your life with? Yeah. And most of my
Yeah.
friends at that time were still Mormon. So in my Facebook feed, everybody was like, I'm so thankful for my husband. He's such a good provider and supporter. Meanwhile, I'm dying of COVID. Give thanks pissed me off too.
Yeah. Exactly. And especially where it's like global pandemic, you're the leader of the one true church, bruh. Like this is the best you can do. This is the best. And people just take like, I don't know,
And then
they
seeing
take
all the little sheep
crumbs.
like, bah, right? Yeah.
I'm
Didn't he
like,
make a big
expect
announcement? Like he
better.
made a big announcement that he was going to make a big announcement. So everybody
Yeah.
listen to this broadcast. We're going to make an announcement. And the announcement was, we want every Mormon in the world to go on their Facebook pages, hashtag give thanks. That's the big
Yeah.
announcement.
And it was just like, you
So
guys are
anticlimactic.
calling
And
this
then
a
all the sheep.
profit
Yeah.
and you're getting crumbs from this dude. So I love satire. And I was like, I'm going to do one and I'm going to do this is hashtag give thanks if posts from Mormons were honest. And I like would put up a picture and be like, Hashtag give thanks. This is me and my family. My kids were such brats that day. And it was so difficult getting like the true story behind family pictures kind of thing of like, they were such brats that day, but I look really hot in this picture. So I get a chance to post it again. Hashtag give thanks for family. Or like, hashtag give thanks that for temples. I'm so grateful that I had people who dress up in 1950s business suits telling me where I go and I can spend 10% of my income just to go to this overpriced country club that offers me absolutely nothing. And I'm not doing a very good job impersonating myself, but basically
You're
just
so snarky. You're so sassy. You're so
Yeah.
confident, and you were so irreverent.
Yeah. And it's like, hashtag give thanks for Jesus. Here's a picture of Jesus and some quote about him. I just stole this post from another person because I thought that'd be a nice thing to say. Hashtag give thanks. And just showing the facade behind it of this is so tired. This is so tried. This is so performative. And I'm like, if we talked about what Mormons would really say, if they're being honest, they would say, and also, I can't believe that this is the campaign that we're doing during a global pandemic when like I kind of thought that our prophet would provide a little bit more guidance for us during this time, but like hashtag give thanks and like go crazy. So I did one of those and then it like went viral. Yeah. And then I did a follow-up to it. I just remember being like, this is my new life now. So everyone cancel all of my plans as a mom. I'm like, I have satire to provide to the ex-Mormon community. My calling has been made. And that sparked everything. That was November of 2020. And then by January, I honestly could not participate in conversations with people. Like that's how bad my brain was. If my kids tried to ask me for something, I'd have to like sit down because if I had to talk, like I would pass out. Like my brain was incapable of even having a conversation. So I was stretching those brain cells as much as I could. And it kind of revitalized me. It really gave me a take two of life, as you could say, because I felt like I'm good at something. This is something to live for, something to get out of bed, to do my hair, to record a TikTok. And besides,
You're
just
literally going to make me cry because TikTok saved my life. And that's funny to say, but I had a brain injury. I was totally bedbound. I was having seizures and mini strokes all the time. Then I got COVID. Then I got a blood clot. Then I had 300 clots in my chest. Then I almost died of that. Then I had another surgery. I wasn't leaving my home. I couldn't even like walk downstairs and go outside. Then I was in a wheelchair and I would lay in bed and I couldn't even sleep on my bed. I was allergic to my mattress. My mattress was giving me seizures. So I was sleeping on a couch wrapped in organic sheets. And it's crazy. It's crazy. I would sleep all day. I would wake up like, okay, today I'm going to do 3 TikTok videos about like general conference just happened, or I'm going to talk about like my Mormon bishop did this or whatever. And it was literally the only thing that I had in life. Kevin didn't live with me yet. I was just completely alone by myself, isolated with COVID and unable to even cope with life. And knowing that at 12 o'clock today, I'm going to get up, I'm going to take a shower, put on some makeup, curl my hair, stand up for 10 minutes and talk into my phone and do this TikTok video. Like that drove me forward every single day.
Same.
And then I'd post it. And my son had to post my videos in the beginning. Like he was like 12 at the time. And like I literally didn't even know how to work TikTok. He pushed the little X for me and then he like suction cut my video onto the window so I could, and then I'm like, okay, can you put some hashtags? Can you post it? Like my teenagers were doing my TikTok for me. And then I would just wiped out, lay in bed for the rest of the day and just read the comments. And it's crazy how the comment section was where so much of my healing started because that's where the Me Too was, right? Like my bishop did this to me, my Mormon ex-husband. This is what being a trad wife actually did, how it warped my soul and crushed me. And here's 5,000 other women, the evangelicists, the Mormons, the JWs, the Catholics. Me too. I got married at 17. I got married at 21. And now I'm divorced and now I'm homeless. And now, or, you know, I haven't gotten my alimony check for 3 months and I don't know how I'm going to make my rent this month. Reading those comments and seeing my experience echoed in different ways, not the same as me, from other people literally began to heal the wounds that I had from being the black sheep. Everybody else in my family was still Mormon. I was this weirdo. I couldn't make myself believe in the church anymore. And I wish that I could have. And just seeing that maybe there's a light. It was the light at the end of the tunnel, but like a really good tunnel. And that was literally all I had. And then like 3 years in, my little son is like, Mom, are you monetized? Because I'm like homeless and can't even buy groceries and whatever. So then I monetize, and all of a sudden, I'm still really sick. I'm still recovering from all of my stuff. All of a sudden, I get a paycheck one month. And it's like, oh, hell. I didn't know that TikTok had monetization capability. Did you ever see my video of sitting in my car crying because I went to Trader Joe's and I couldn't afford bread? Because
Sounds
I
familiar.
had $60 in my bank account. I only had $20 in my bank account. I pulled out my phone because I was video diarying all the shit that the Mormon Church did to me. I recorded that, posted that video, woke up the next day. That one had already hit like 5 million videos the next day. And it was crazy, the opportunities then of people like, hey, do you want this part-time job, social media managing for me? Some of my followers donating money. And then like the documentaries, the podcast, all of the other things that I've done in life happened literally because of that one video that I posted on my TikTok one night, because I felt like I needed to warn people about the Mormon Church. So
Yep.
so TikTok
Incredible journey you've
changed
been on.
our path. Well, you too. I feel like you're like
You're
my
a better person than I, though. I'm
no
like,
way.
those early days of TikTok, it was mostly me just being like, what makes me laugh and what is irreverent? And I would make videos for what, like, Carah of 2 years ago, if I was Mormon, would find funny and would listen to. So I didn't want it to be irreverent just for irreverence sake. Like, I wasn't dancing in my temple clothes like other people did. I was like, I know that I would have turned that off. I would have been like, okay, I'm not listening to that person. But I'm like, what would have been like smart satirical humor that I would have been like, all right, this girl has a point. So I was after just like the comedy of it at first, just because it's a canvas to play with. Like the video you mentioned earlier of what Mormon missionaries would say at your door if they're being honest.
I love
like,
that.
That's
I
just
love that
fun
series.
That's just a fun sketch to write and to write follow-ups to, of like, it's not if they were honest, it's if Mormon missionaries talk to experts at their door, and like an expert on boat building to be like, oh, Nephi sailed across America. Really? With what dry dock? Like, how did he get the sails? Just like going through all of the inconsistencies and pointing out contradictions and stuff. Like, doing that at a rapid pace in a comedic way, in a character, was always just like, that's fun. And so when we're talking about after this dark night of the soul, after you are on the precipice of either starting a new life or ending your own, like, where do you go from there? Like, I'm so glad that you followed this path and you're able to provide for yourself. My path was just following comedy. And from that's what I'm so glad is what I reconnected with post the church, because being a trad wife, that was my entire, when my kids were little and raising them before I left the church, like, everything was just about my kids and I lost my sense of self. And so tapping back into the things that brought me the most joy, whether growing up when I was a kid, the way that I coped with my childhood abuse was I turned to comedy. I was just obsessed with writing jokes and comedy and writing satirical, funny songs growing up and performing at talent shows and everything and getting into stand-up. And being able to reclaim that and finding my awe and my purpose and my meaning was just like, I just want to make people laugh. And I'm not that altruistic of a person. I was like, I also wanted compliments. I want people to tell me that I'm hilarious when I know I'm being hilarious. I'm like, yes, that was a very good sketch. Thank you. I'm sure you've seen my most viral one is where I'm talking in a really stupid voice about responding to the 60 Minutes interview about the church and their hiding all of their money in their bank accounts one.
The tithing,
one where I say bread.
Tithing scandal.
And I'm like, I recorded that on a 10 edible and I thought I was hilarious. And I'm so glad the internet agreed with me. So I'm like, Brad, poor people love Brad. Like, I've been talking in this voice with my sister since we were kids. And now I get to show it to the world and mock Mormonism at the same time. Love it so much. Like, being able to just like pull out characters and be stupid and have this canvas of Mormonism, it just felt like it's been a fun time. It's been a fun time following what makes me laugh. It's my coping mechanisms. Other people, they laugh, they connect through comedy. So that's just kind of what I like to do. And now I don't do that quite as much anymore because I'm introspective Carah now. Now I say things that make Jenny go, Carah, you're such a deep thinker. I'm like, I was a deep thinker all along.
Carah.
I hid it behind all of my 60-second satirical takes on Mormonism.
I sort of miss that. So now that I'm over on YouTube, I've had to grow up and I'm talking to politics and I work with senators and all of these big personalities and journalists and things like that. So, but I do feel like I have grown up. I was a 17-year-old girl at age 44. I was a 17-year-old teenager trapped inside the body of a 44-year-old woman when I left the church. And I have had to rapidly mature, and I do feel more mature. But I loved being satirical. Like when I used I have a little Angel Moroni statue over here, a little mini one on my dresser. And there was this whole sound going around about you can use anything for a dildo. And so I panned down and I was being sexy with my Angel Moroni. And I don't get to bring that comedy over to YouTube. And I wish that I could.
I still do. So I have my Joseph Smith bookends.
Oh my God.
Sometimes I bring this guy out.
So good.
I love a prop.
Well, you were absolutely like an inspiration to so many of us. I have 10,000 more questions for you now than I ever did before. I think that someday maybe I need to have you back and go into like what's wrong with America and all of that stuff, because you had a totally different train of thought that has so many beautiful lessons in it for people that I didn't expect. Let's skip that for today, because it would be absolutely like incongruous with anything that we've ever talked about. So we're going to skip over that. How do I want to do a little bit of wrap up? So I have some questions for you. First, I should probably put a bookend on our conversation here. Hats off to you for... We're going to put a
Did you mean to say that?
On it.
Do you need a Joseph Smith bookend? My joke is I used to have a Brigham one of them, but he broke and he fell on the ground and I was very disturbed. But my joke is with my Joseph and Brigham bookends, as I say, that I wish that they were the bookends of Mormonism. Get it? Okay. Anyway.
Wouldn't that have been nice? The world would be such a different place without Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. Hats off to you for everything that you did, because genuinely, if I hadn't seen some of your videos, like you inspired me to think I should open up my camera and talk about what the church did to me, talk about my stake president telling me that I shouldn't have a job, that I should just be a stay-at-home mom. Like you were part of my inspiration. I remember like you were my goalpost for everything. One day I passed you up on TikTok numbers wise, simply just because I had a cheating husband who I could tell all kinds of stories about. I got some stories, and I think
you're very talented at talking about them, so it's not just.
But I'm not more talented than you. But I remember that day that all of a sudden, like you had 72,000 people, and I had like 74,000 followers, and I was like, oh my God, like we're doing something. Like I did something. Yeah, that was a surreal moment. You were the goalpost, and genuinely, like, how would I like all those little moments, right? There's people that cross your path that have an impact on you that you don't even realize. If I had never seen Mitch Shira, if I hadn't seen you on TikTok, what would I be doing today? Would I be working at Trader Joe's? Would I be like start some little daycare in my house because that's the only thing that I know how to do? Would I be volunteering for Chris Volpe's Senate race as he tries to reclaim J.D. Vance's vacated seat for the Democratic Party? Would I be doing anything that I'm doing today if I hadn't seen one of your videos? I don't think so.
Wow.
So
wow, you're making me feel all sorts of like I'm not so bad after all. I mean,
you're an inspiration. You're an icon.
It's very sweet, and you never know what will happen when you download the TikTok app. And I certainly didn't know that it would take me to saying yes to John DeLynn when he asked me to be the co-host in like a topsy-turvy freaking world of just being a working mom. Like, let's just talk about that was my first job. Is like I have like a 6-month-old baby or whatever, and I'm like, not only am I podcasting and I'm publicly saying my opinions that are like very ill-informed. I regret disavow anything you've ever heard me say online, probably before this interview. Like I have no idea who that was, and she's on it's an ongoing journey and changing, but nonetheless, like just even having a job and being a working mom and finding some autonomy and independence and all of that, like all of that was intense for me as a person.
That imposter syndrome. I had a real job as a part-time aide in the school for $11 an hour. That's actually the only job that I've had, because then I was disabled and then I started social media, right? So I've only ever had that one job in my entire adult life. It's the first job I've had since I was 19.
Really?
And I had such imposter syndrome. That very first day walking into elementary school, I felt like an escaped housewife. Like, what am I doing here? Look at all of these adults. I didn't know how to use the time clock. I didn't know I was 15 minutes late. And then I had to go to the bathroom 5 minutes later. And then I felt trapped because I was inside this school for 4 hours. But such imposter syndrome. I felt like people were going to look at me and think of like, why is this mom at work? Like, what's she doing here?
Yeah, that's what's so difficult about being in a trad wife role for so long. Like you've talked about extensively, like one, making money for yourself and having the skills is one thing, but then also like the imposter syndrome of like, I just look at I'm like, everyone should know I'm just a tall child. Do they not see
Yeah.
I'm really just a tall child? Like, I think everyone can see that. It was like, I still act it, but
Yeah. And people comment on that with me. Like sometimes my real life friends say, Jenny, you just have such like a young spirit. No, it's developmental like delay. Because I was a Mormon housewife for so many years. Okay, Carah, I have a couple questions for you. And then we'll say adios for the day.
I'll be so sad.
Maybe have you back again sometime.
Yeah.
So I just want your response to these quotes, and you're probably going to recognize some of them. You can leave the church, but you can't leave the church alone. How do you feel about that? What would you say to that?
You can leave the church, but you can't leave it alone. Is a phrase said by some Mormon guy. He's irrelevant because I've left the church alone, that I can't even remember the name of the guy who said that in the church, to be honest. But it's a rhetorical phrase meant to stifle conversation. And I think if you belong to a church that has Jesus Christ in it, it is imperative on you to not stifle the conversation of why people aren't leaving it alone. It is a necessity of your Christianity to investigate and be a listening ear and an empathetic person to know why they can't leave it alone. Because if more ex-Mormons left the church alone completely, some do, but thank God for the activists. Thank God for the feminists.
Amen.
Thank God for the leftists. Thank God for the people who did not leave people alone in the FLDS church and any other cult that said, I have left, but I am going to go back to the 99. I'm going to leave the 99 and I'm going to go back with the one, because that's what our Christianity is really all about. So whether you believe in that Christ deity or not, that is still my value system, to leave the partying and the drinking and what I could be doing with my ex-Mormon life to still live out that Christian value, to go after the one, to still try to make reforms and changes within a system, because I am the beneficiary of it. And whether you can tell it or not, you are too. And that is the history of progressive reform. That is the history of the Mormon Church, is people not leaving it alone. So count your blessings that we do not listen and pay attention to your snarky little phrases, whoever you are, Mormon prophet who said that once. It's my answer.
It gave me goosebumps.
Thanks.
I feel like the tank top garments are because of us and all of the people getting baptized in Africa. Carah, so well said. I just heard a podcast. I think I was actually listening to Jacob Hansen. Sorry, I didn't tell you I was going to cuss on the show today. So I was listening to Jacob Hansen, and he had a Christian guy on, and he was talking about ex-Mormons. It was a whole entire live stream on ex-Mormons, and Jacob Hansen was saying that ex-Mormons should stop being anti-Mormons and stop talking about the church. And this Christian that he had on said, I see things very differently. As a Protestant, the ex-Mormon voice is important because they are the reformists, and every church needs to be reformed if you're going to grow and fit the humanity that is contained within your congregations. You need reformists. So beautifully said. Okay. Second quote. Tell me what you think about this. Natural man is an enemy to God and has been from the beginning.
Ooh, good one. The natural man is an enemy to God and has been from the beginning. That was a phrase that was put in my mind, thinking that there is an evil that is inherent to my being that can only be rooted out by my faith and covenants with Jesus Christ, that evil exists in all of us, and that there is a mechanism and a place for salvation to be found. And when you believe that that is part of your core being, it is something to be rooted out and to work on, instead of when you go through more of a life journey through shadow work and recognizing that we all have a shadow side that is neither good or bad. It's just a reflection of who we are as a human. And the more that we cast that into the shadows, the more that it will be repressed. And so religion's mechanism for rooting out that natural man, quote unquote, is through, I'll say, not very helpful mechanisms. There's some helpful ones, but it's usually a self-fulfilling prophecy and a self-fulfilling anxiety perpetual emotion machine that gives you
Guilt,
the poison and also gives you
shame,
the solution at the
repentance.
same time. Yeah, that they have you on their hamster wheel. Those shadows exist in all of us, but the best way to root out those the shadow side is to confront them and to be honest that we have them, and what your deepest, darkest desires, what they reveal in you, without casting judgment on them, and let them have a voice and be brought to the surface so that they can be part of your psyche and part of the conversation, instead of judging them and pushing them deeper into the shadows. Because if you want to say the natural man is there from the beginning and always has been, like, that could be interpreted as like sexual desire. What do you do when you think that desire needs to be rooted out? It gets repressed, and it can form into all kinds of dysfunction and other kinks and other problems that are going to pop up in the grass somewhere else when you shove it down over here. And so that's part of it's a nuanced take, because religion has some answers to the problems of, helping people work through their psyche. But fundamentally, we are all a mixture of our conditions and our wounds, and whatever theme of consciousness that you kind of, I think of, sorry, this is a long answer, but I think of our brains in terms of themes of consciousness, and can start with different wounds. And you start your life as kind of a child that is looking out into the world, happy skipping, until you put on blankets of distrust and blankets to hide yourself with the world is unsafe, and this is how you make yourself safe, with different coping mechanisms, thought patterns, and so forth. And so you unconsciously force yourself into a theme of consciousness, and mine has been a lot of abandonment. And so that theme of abandonment, that is also always kind of in a scarcity mindset instead of a space of abundance, and the good things are coming to you. That theme of abandonment is where I found myself so religious, because you have a God that will never abandon you. You have a system that's true through and through. And when you're trying to go through the world thinking that you have an inescapable evil within inside of you, instead of just recognizing that these are just themes of consciousness and wounds that can be rooted out by investigating and letting them come to the surface free of judgment, which is just not available within religion. So it's like, I see what you're saying, religion and Mormonism. I see it, but it's not the interpretation that I would have, and we have very different solutions.
Oh, that was so good. I'm going to go back and take notes on everything that you said and think about it.
You're making me feel very confident that I was about to drop out of Brit's class, because I was like, no, it's a lot of money and my attention is divided, but you are making me feel better. I was like, no, the reason why being a spiritual director is going to be hard for me is because I have to shut up a lot, and I'm not good at shutting up. I'm better at talking than listening sometimes. So I'm like, no, I say all of this with total humility, that like I am just on the precipice of coming into my own consciousness, like we talked about, of like delayed adolescence and so many things. And leaving Mormonism, I have had a really rough 5 years. And been through the darkest times of my life.
So hard.
After I, was comfortable with not believing in God anymore, like being in the ex-Mormon space, having difficult friendships and relationships and work-life balance and who I am as a person, like the real journey has been over the last just like 3 years. And I'm so grateful for those experiences, but like they could have almost killed me. Like some things were so devastating to my psyche that's what life is, though. I asked Natasha Helfer, who's a sex therapist, once what we should do about like narcissists in the ex-Mormon community. And she's like people who just do want to take advantage of people in desperate times and don't have people's best interests to look out for. Yep. And her answer was actually kind of shocking, but I think it's true. She said to me, like, she's like, that's life. She's like, life is, you're going to have to go through experiences and develop your own internal sense of who's right for you, who's wrong for you. And you're just going to have to become an adult. And it was like the least empathetic answer I'd ever heard.
The good advice.
Like, I don't want to misquote her. Natasha's one of my good friends. She's lovely. But she was like, that's life. You live and you learn, and then you don't do that again. But like, nobody can protect you from narcissists. It's just how it's going to be.
No.
And I was like, yeah, I say all of this because of just like learning some hard lessons, learning like what I hate in others, that there also exists in myself. And I don't have any enemies. I only have friends and teachers out there, of just being very nuanced and chill, that like, I really shouldn't be pointing fingers at anyone, because there are plenty of wounds and ways that I am acting out of places of scarcity instead of abundance and comfort and ease, that I should be working on within myself. And you don't recognize that until sometimes things in your life blow up. And it's through those blow up that you learn how to handle them, and what these subconscious themes have always been about, and how religion has answers for them, and how you have to develop your own secular answers for them.
I think the secular answers are so much more helpful and so much more meaningful in every way, and in those relationships too. Okay, I have one more for you.
I'll answer this one quicker. I'm sorry.
No, you have so much useful information. It's so great. Okay, here's our last question. How do you react to the quote, doubt your doubts? What would you say to somebody? They told you now to doubt your doubts.
Doubt your doubts. Those in the what's the word? Thought-stopping cliches.
In the context, for those of my audience that aren't Mormon or ex-Mormon, this is one of the Mormon apostles who, in a general conference talk to the whole population of Mormons, said that whenever you have questions about the church, when you're being tempted to throw away your testimony, his answer to that was, learn to doubt your doubts and question the doubt instead of actually investigating the question.
And what you're in effect doing is you're questioning your own sanity, because in the church, when something doesn't feel right, like going through the temple for me was like, I knew after I went through the temple that it was weird and it was spooky. And I remember asking my mom,
it's horrible.
Like I was like, so how do I learn about what just happened there? Like, I had no preparation really. I took temple prep, but that didn't do anything. And I was like,
temple prep doesn't do anything because it's a secret.
Yeah, they don't tell you that you're going to be wearing green robes and shouting things and shaking God's hand and stuff.
You didn't get the naked rub down.
Yeah, of course, that too.
People touched me naked, head to toe.
Like, you were so not prepared for that. No. And so you're having some doubts. And what my mom said to me was like, "Oh, you just go a lot, and then you find meaning in it." And I just was like, okay. And so that's kind of the blueprint for so much of Mormonism, is like, if you're having trouble with this thing, do it more until you find meaning in it, because it's going to be a you problem. If you don't find meaning and value in this, it's not the thing that's the problem. It's always you that's the problem. And I'm going to get really like meta and talking directly to the audience for a second. What that is trying to do to a person's psyche is it is trying to disconnect you from the most fucked up, integral thing that you should never take away from a person, which is your sense of intuition and autonomy and identity. You can still be part of a group, you can still be part of a religion. Not all religions do this the same, but separating yourself from a core knowing is what is so insidious about so many of Mormon rituals that are just straight up culty. And that is what is core to authoritarian dogmatic regimes, core to religions of the same ilk, that have to separate you from your intuition of knowing that that's not right and it's not a me problem. And instead falling back into what I was saying before, into a sense of safety that should be carved out within yourself, that the Mormon Church and other religions like it have purposely designed to have outsourced to authority figures, to stake presidents, to prophets, and to God and Jesus Christ. They might want to say, they say personal revelation, but it is still revelation within the confines and the lines of what they deem as appropriate revelation. So again, that leash thing of like, but we have personal revelation. That is golden handcuffs kind of thing. Like that doesn't do anything, So the insidious nature of religion is that if I wanted to run a healthy religion, I would never say something like that, because I would want people to have a sense of their own internal metrics of checking in with their body. And so if you're having doubts, that is going to dysregulate you. And I would want a healthy society that's regulated healthily. But when you create a society and you create a religion where you're always giving the poison and the antidote one after the other, you're keeping people so busy in their callings that they don't have time to do anything and explore anything outside of the God and the outsourced figure that you've given them. You are asking for a dysregulated, dysfunctional society. And there's a quote, there's a saying that goes like, authoritarian regimes are antithetical to the human flourishing. Does that make sense?
Amen.
Mm-hmm. Like fascism is antithetical to human survival. That humans, for a short time, they can be conned into living a certain way, but our human inner bonding and knowing wants to break out of that. So doubt your doubts is a thought-stopping cliche meant to shut down your critical thinking skills for the benefit of another type of dictator who does not benefit from you being regulated and being in touch with your own internal system of what is right and wrong. That's my summary.
What do you do with your doubts now?
My doubts. What would be a doubt that I would have now? I doubt...
you're making a decision about what to do this weekend. You've already made the decision and you're feeling like, maybe I shouldn't go to this place with this person. Any of your doubts, anything.
For one, I do struggle with shame a lot. That's been the number one thing I've had to overcome, because
I have not met a former Mormon who doesn't struggle with shame.
I think it's that thing, you'll hear celebrities talk about this all the time. I'm sure you can probably experience this too, where like you could get 100 comments on something and you could be Taylor Swift and people are shouting your name and screaming your name. But if you get like one bad review, like it sticks in your brain of the bad, the negative thing. Like our brain has a propensity towards remembering negative things for whatever reason. And my brain does do that a lot when I think back at my life. Like it is just a highlight show of like, bad choice. You were dumb there. Dumb. You ruined that. And that was terrible. And that's like the number one thing I've had to overcome is regulating my nervous system, holding myself like, internally, being comfortable with that's not the whole story. And so how do I rewrite that story? And one thing, like I said, with the whale watching boat is finding how do I alchemize this pain into something that is useful instead of it just being a shame story. Because the whale watching thing, like I felt really stupid. I paid $50. I'm broke. I'm like, I paid $50 freaking dollars to go on a boat and throw it for 2 hours. Like horrible,
I love that you
horrible.
Money to watch whales. That just says so much about you, Carah.
I love the ocean, and I love the ocean. Want to do something wholesome with my sister.
You're gonna spend your last dime on whale watching, like
yep.
Right there.
And it could be a negative story, but I am a person who likes to rewrite that shame and rewrite it into a wider narrative to kind of alchemize myself out of that pain and that, self-doubt that can just be like, I should never leave my bed. I just make nothing but bad choices. Never give me a credit card. I don't know what I'm doing, changing that story into something that fits within my value system. And for me, that's comedy. So I've rewritten all of that and I just call it my lore now. I just call myself like a Utah girl who's building my lore. And people are like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, well, I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm like, I have stories upon stories for days of just dumb things that I have done. It's part of my lore. I'm like, it's not a shame story anymore. It's just all part of the. I contain multitudes. Like I contain multitudes.
Do I
It's all part of
contradict myself? Very
It's
well
all
then. I
part of the
contain
stories.
multitudes.
So, do I doubt myself? I have to just keep on a system that fits within my values. If I have one amazing piece of advice that's changed my life, is I hired a goals coach on a website. I have a lovely French Canadian woman named Brigitte who I check in with every single night at 11 p.m. And we set my goals for the week. And I tell her if I did my goals. My goals are usually just writing every day. So I've done this since March. And it's been great to help me individuate and know myself. So since I split with my husband, I just wanted to spend time alone and get to know who I am. And journaling is a great way to do that. And I wouldn't do that if I didn't pay someone to like put a gun to me and be like, do it, bitch. So I write rather creatively or journaling. I make sure that I just have an outlet so that I get to know myself just the same way you talk to a friend and you're getting to know them. Like I journal and I get to know myself and my thoughts and what's on my mind and building a self-trust with myself. I don't doubt as much because again, this is the reason why I've been giving these long answers. It's because I didn't have that sense of identity. I didn't have that sense of self until I was apart from my husband and apart from the church and on my own and needing to just get in touch with who I am and what I think and what I believe. And the best way to do that for me has just been like journaling and writing as much as possible. And that's where I'm at today. Like I'm able to just talk to myself as a good friend, trust myself.
Carah, you're such an inspiration. I will just echo that sentiment that I didn't know who I was until really just the past few years. If you had asked me when I was 22 or 26 or 38 or whatever, who are you? Well, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a Mormon, I'm a daughter of my Heavenly Father who loves me. My identity had been handed to me on a silver platter, and I truly didn't know who I was. Just a couple months ago, my therapist told me not to cook dinner anymore. I'm no longer the dinner cooker. We go out to eat almost every night a week, or Kevin cooks because I work more than him now. And she said, why don't you just take yourself to the grocery store and buy food just for you? And I'm in Trader Joe's. I had no idea what the fuck I want to eat if I'm not buying for my kids, if I'm not buying for Kevin. I picked stuff up and looked at it and it's like, well, do I want smoked trout? Do I want tofu? Do I want, like, what do I eat? And in so many ways, when you've been given your personality, it's really difficult to know who you are. And I do think, again, that's another one of those gifts of the faith crisis, to be a fully grown adult female and for the first time ever to get to know yourself, to get to experiment with what you love and what you don't love and what your purpose is, and to fall in love with adult Carah for the first time and unpeel all of those onion layers of the personality that the Mormon Church just wrapped you in and see the real Carah come out. I definitely think that that's one of the gifts of that faith crisis.
Yeah.
So you've been so inspiring. Thank you so much for just giving us so much to think about. Once again, Carah's over here on YouTube. I love everything that you're doing on Tim Ballard because I hate him on every level for so many personal reasons that I've never been able to talk about publicly. So I love everything that you're doing about Tim Ballard and the Operation Underground Railroad and everything that he was running. I love all of the new insight as you kind of morph into this spiritual journey and the, what does Jim Palmer call it? The spiritual advisor? No, what do you call it?
Spiritual director?
Spiritual director. I love everything that you're talking about on your channel. So please go over to Carah. And I 10 out of 10 recommend going over to TikTok and perusing through the old school Nuance Ho videos, wind all the way back to the beginning. And
you can go popular and then just start there and you'll see my glory days. The
glory days were so great, and I couldn't have gotten through any of it without him. So thank you for everything you've done. And thank you, everybody, for watching. I'll be hanging out in the comments to say hello and answer any questions. And be kind, everybody. Have a great day. Any final words, Carah?
From
Do you want
me,
to say goodbye or anything before I disconnect and I'll edit out the...
I'll say, Jenny, you're such a delight to talk to. We could just literally gab for hours. I have so much fun talking to you. Thank you for your voice and building up this platform and giving me an opportunity to speak to your audience. And yeah, everybody at home, be nice to the people around you. Do the work that you need to do. Build your own communities. Don't be always just pointing your finger at who needs to work on other stuff. There's work to do right here at home. That's my final takeaway message. And yeah, check me out on YouTube. And if you feel so inclined, I have a Patreon that I'm trying to get some more funding so I can be as successful as Jenny Gage over here and tell more of my story and feel more bold. So thank you, Jenny. You're also an inspiration to me because I did not know that the audience on YouTube for like ex-trad wife content and so forth was available. And I'm like, oh, well, you guys want me to talk about that version of my life? I was like, well, say less. I'm like, I got stories for days on that too. So I'll probably be telling more ex-trad wife, kind of alt-right stories in the future and deconstructing my conservatism. And I don't think I'd be brave enough to start telling those stories because I know I will lose a subsection of my ex-Mormon audience because they're like, I'm here to talk about Tim Ballard and I'm here because I'm an ex-Mormon. Are you saying that Trump is bad? Like, yeah, I am. Like, I'm at that point where I'm like, unsubscribe if you are not on the basis of like what state of the country we're in right now. So
that's what I decided. I'm in panic mode. So I don't know. I'm sure I lost people and I found myself. So.
Exactly. I'm like, it's a journey to myself and you guys are on the ride for it. So yeah. So if anyone's in Salt Lake and you're looking for spiritual direction or trip sitting help in the future, I'll give you my email. I'll put that in the description. We can chat going forward. But thank you for your just loving words and support, Jenny. Takes one to know one. So anything you said to me, I'm just throwing it right back to you. So you're a delight. Thank you for building up this platform and being so bold and inspiring me. So I'm just grateful to be here.
Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next time.